Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees and the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors for Monday, July 8th, 2019. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thanks. Phyllis, could we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Clint Folsom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mark Lasis.
Here.
Trustee Sandy Hammerling.
Here.
Ken Lish.
Here.
Kevin Ryan.
Here.
Neil Shaw. Laura Skudinski.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley. Here. Town Attorney Dan Harvey.
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Weir.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any board members who would like to make changes to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis, second by Trustee Lish. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. All right, next is reports, questions, and issues. Who'd like to start? Ken, how about you?
All right, so I'll start off with some of the meetings that took place between our last meeting about a month ago and now, our regular meeting. On June 13th, I attended an ACES meeting. As I'm sure all of you saw in their minutes write-up, the committee is interested in expanding the town's electric vehicle charging station footprint. As such, they've requested a budgetary allotment for next fiscal year to assist with this effort by obtaining a consultant. I also attended a commuting solutions meeting on June 18th with Alex Arenello. We heard some interesting presentations regarding transportation initiatives during the last legislative session, as well as presentations on transportation solutions from some of the local governments in our area. I did not attend the meeting, but I did watch the video from our website, and Trustee Shaw's not here this evening to speak to it, but I'd like to commend ProStack on the work that they did related to the engagement for a playground within Zone 3. Through the community activating themselves and through ProStack's efforts, I think we heard loud and clear what the desires of the community were. I believe ProStack came to the proper conclusion to leave Riverbend Park as it is. I would recommend and encourage all board members to not only go back and watch ProStack's meeting from last month, but to also review the data from themselves. One thing that I would note that was clear during their meeting and their conversations that might not have been so clearly articulated in the notes was that there was significant discussion about there still being a need for a playground in Zone 3. That demand was shown and bore out in the data, but they didn't make recommendations for where it should be. So not knowing where the ultimate developments, what will be included in the developments in that area, I would encourage that we as a board circle back to this item at the end of the fiscal year, once we've gone through the appropriate approval process for the pending development applications. And then finally, at our June 10th meeting, I provided an update that Boulder County is ready to assist the town in our efforts to help find a noise mitigation solution related to the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport. I'm pleased to report that on June 25th, the Boulder County Commissioners sent a formal letter to the Jefferson County Commissioners on behalf of Superior and Louisville residents. Through conversations with some of their staff members, Boulder County continues to stand ready to assist us going forward and is eagerly awaiting the results from our consultants. That's all.
Thanks, Ken. Laura?
So first, I want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July last week. I also wanted to commend our entire town staff as well as the Chamber of Commerce for doing a fantastic job running the 4th of July parade and the pancake breakfast. This event has grown significantly over the years, and I know it's really quite a challenge to plan and execute an event of this magnitude. This year we had some new individuals on staff handling the functions. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Clint, copying what you wrote.
That sounds like what I wrote.
So mine, I wanted to say, the town staff in the chamber really outdid themselves. I really love the addition of the wonderful soprano who sang the national anthem, the silent disco tent, the extra inflatables, and the relocation of them to downwind so that the great band could be better heard. Really huge kudos to everyone for the fantastic job with the events. I also last week attended 2 weeks ago, attended the CAPS meeting on behalf of Kevin. During the CAPS meeting, we heard from Happy City, the consultant we've engaged to develop the Cultural Arts Master Plan. I was really originally thrilled that we approved Happy City, but in the meeting, I was a little dismayed by the plan. Specifically, I was concerned with the limited planned engagement of key stakeholders before a draft plan will be developed. In comparison, our economic development consultant began his work by conducting comprehensive interviews with stakeholders, which is an approach I think will result in a more tailored plan that fits Superior and its character. I expressed these concerns in the meeting along with Trustee Hammerly and former Trustee Pennington, and I understand that representatives tonight will be here to walk us through the plan. So I'm really eager to hear what changes will be made, how we can better engage the community, and make sure that this is something that's really tailored to Superior.
Okay, thanks, Laura.
Again, great job on the 4th of July event. I participated actually in the parade. I think that was the first time I've been in a parade since I was a Boy Scout about 35 years ago. So really well done. The night before on July 3rd, I had a listening session in Wildflower Park to talk about the future uses of the Land Rover building. While attendance was a bit low, this was a very informal event, not necessarily town sponsored, just something I wanted to do on my own. A lot of great ideas were shared, and I will send a note out to the trustees on some of those ideas, but a couple really immediate things. Number one, a lot of questions about kind of the environmental impact and risks associated with the purchase of a building. We have not closed on this building. We are conducting inspections and due diligence the same way you would conduct inspections and due diligence on your own home. And our offer is contingent upon those inspections and that due diligence. So if we find any surprises, and we certainly don't expect to find any surprises, but if we find surprises, then we'll deal with them accordingly, the same way you all dealt with the surprises in the purchase of your home or the sale of your home. Some of us have been dismayed by some of those surprises. And second, a really good suggestion that somebody had was to hold a listening session or some type of session about the Land Rover building in the Land Rover building. Now we'll probably have to call it something else besides the Land Rover building, but I think that's a really great idea. So later today, we'll be talking about how to engage the community in that as an agenda topic, but I wanted to bring that good idea up now just in case folks that maybe were making public comment this evening wanted to consider that as part of their public comment. And thank you to Laura and Sandy for attending CAPS in my absence. That's it.
Thanks. Sandy?
I attended the OSAC meeting on June 12th. The minutes that are included in the packet capture the flavor of the items discussed. But I would like to point out to the trustees that OSAC, thank you. OSAC joined with ProStack in supporting an update of the PROS master plan in 2020. It will be something that will be coming to us as part of the budget requests for 2020. And the fact that our two Parks and Rec and Open Space Advisory Committees have joined on the importance of this, I'd seriously like the board to consider that when it comes to us. I also attended the ProStack meeting on June 19th. I have been asked by Trustee Shaw to read a statement regarding the ProStack meeting, and when I finish my report, I'd like to read that. And then I did attend the CAPS meeting on June 27th. I also attended Trustee Ryan's informal listening session on the Land Rover property on July 30th. And while the attendance was modest, I would say we really heard some great ideas from the folks who were in attendance. And I sincerely appreciate the sort of tentative design that staff had designed us sort of early on that we could just show to folks, because it gave a great opportunity for people to at least say, yeah, we think this is a good idea or not. When you just throw out a blank slate, sometimes it's hard for people to even have any vision. I also attended on June 24th the Rock Creek Traffic Calming Engagement meeting that was held at the Summit at Rock Creek Townhomes. There's still a lot to be involved in that process, but the thing that was most interesting to me was that in the data that was presented, interestingly, when you looked at the traffic when it went from, on Rock Creek Circle from Torrey's Peak to Colton Road, the speed limit is actually 30, but the average speed there is about 23 to 25. So people are driving much slower. Now, I happen to live on Rock Creek Circle, so I have a little bit of a particular interest in it. And so I thought, well, that just seems a little crazy to me, but what's going to happen when you look at the other end, which is where you go down the hill toward Walgreens and Starbucks. For those of you who are not aware, the on Rock Creek Circle, the speed limit actually drops from 30 to 25 as you go down the hill toward Walgreens. And the average speed there, when you are going down the hill, the average speed was 34 miles an hour, and coming up the hill, it was 32 miles an hour. So the speeds there are absolutely significantly in excess of the posted speed limit. And I think the folks who were all at that meeting are looking forward to more engagement from the town because they are seriously concerned about the safety of not only our drivers, but more importantly, the pedestrians who cross that road. As I said, and the one other comment I would say is if you do drive on Rock Creek Circle, please, folks, slow down. It's summertime. We have lots of children out in the community. They're going across that street, and I know you're really in a hurry to get to work or to get home after work, but that is a really dangerous hill when you come down on the east end of Rock Creek Circle, and those of us who live in that area would really appreciate you slowing down. As I said, I agreed to read a statement for Trustee Shaw, who is unfortunately on vacation in a horrible, horrible place. But he did take some time to send this statement. On June 19th, I attended the monthly ProStack meeting and want to highlight one key decision made by the committee. Following a robust discussion, the committee voted unanimously not to pursue any playground activities at the Riverbend Park area at this time. I want to thank ProStack for navigating through a difficult and at times contentious process. While it is troubling that Boulder County sheriffs needed to be involved, I do appreciate the passion that people feel for the amenities we have throughout the town. To that end, based on some of the discussions by ProStack and nearby residents, I would like to see us unlock more potential for the Riverbend Park area. Circle Park is less than 1/20th the size with 5 permanent benches, while Riverbend has only 2. What modest tweaks can we make such that more folks can enjoy both the serenity and waterfowl along the town's best sledding hill? It is also worth noting that on the most important questions of needing park amenities at either Riverbend or within Zone 3, the results of the survey were all within the 7% margin of error. There is not an overwhelming majority for or against the option. Viewed differently, fully half the survey participants think the town should add some sort of playground entity or amenities to the area of Zone 3. With this decision and admirable work done by ProStack, I think it is worth revisiting how we got here. In fact, a lot of existing resident angst could have been avoided if we, as a board, had exerted more influence on Boulder Creek Neighborhood's Lantern Lane project to add park and playground facilities rather than trying to add them where the immediate neighbors have neither an interest nor a desire for such amenities. The fact that Boulder Creek Neighborhoods is now executing on 3 separate residential park projects within Superior with dozens of residential units and 0 playgrounds or parks is not going unnoticed by either ProStack or our community. So while I fully concur with ProStack's decision on the Riverbend Park, I challenge this board going forward to get a playground into the area that was referred to as Zone 3, and to push back on development plans that meet our strict criteria for open space, but fall woefully short of the spirit of the type of development that all Superior residents benefit from. And that would be it for my report.
Thanks, Cindy. Mark.
Good evening, everyone. On the 4th of July, Matt, Patrick, great job to you, to staff. The parade, the pancake breakfast, it was a huge success, and we must have had record turnout. I don't know if we monitor the actual participation that we have, but yeah, anecdotally, it was packed. And you know, it just proves that when the weather is right, people will wait 40 minutes for free pancakes. So going forward, let's keep up the good work. I think we need to set up a couple more pancake stations next year, because they were in demand. Just wanted to give 2 updates on Rocky Flats. At the last board meeting, I gave a preview of the Broomfield City Council meeting that was scheduled for June 18th and then June 25th. They held a study session on the Jefferson Parkway on June 18, and they were waiting to see whether or not CDPHE would show up. They did. There was an informative presentation from CDPHE. Broomfield also heard from a coalition of residents and citizens who were in opposition to Broomfield making the $2.5 million funding commitment for the additional studying of potentially locating the Jefferson Parkway through the Rocky Flats area. The plan at that point in time was to have the study session on the 18th and then a vote on June 25th. Following the study session, there was kind of an informal straw poll taken amongst the city council, and they haven't scheduled a vote. So it remains to be seen what Broomfield's going to do with the $2.5 million funding commitment, but as of today, they haven't voted either to approve it or to deny it. They've just kind of tabled the issue. It may come up in the future, so I would just recommend anybody who's interested in the Jefferson Parkway to stay active and engaged. Pay attention to what's going on in Broomfield. They've got an election coming up in November. This is certainly going to be a hot button issue for the Broomfield City Council elections. But hopefully, you know, if Broomfield doesn't make the $2.5 million funding commitment, this is one of those, you know, first dominoes to fall in terms of opposing the Jefferson Parkway, which Superior historically has been opposed to. Secondly, I just wanted to highlight an article that was in the Daily Camera and the Denver Post, which just mentioned that for the first time in 13 years, we'll be getting some new soil samples done at the Rocky Flats site related to the Rocky Mountain Greenway crossings. So that's great news. We haven't had soil sampling since 2006, and the samples that we had in 2006 weren't necessarily ideal. So in my opinion, the more information that we can get about Rocky Flats, the better, to better inform the public about the dangers of Rocky Flats. So stay tuned for that. I'll certainly report to the board and to the public about the results of those samples when we get them. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Good evening, everyone. Wanted to also compliment staff and all of our committees and commissions, the Superior Chamber, and all of the resident volunteers for all the great work on the 4th of July. I enjoyed the parade, although I missed my wife, Leslie, who is at home recovering from surgery on her birthday, nonetheless, who is not able to attend the parade with me this year, but we had a great time. And in the Sentinel, the Superior Sentinel this month, I wrote an article about that I'm seeking volunteers for the U.S. Census Complete Count Committee that I'm forming for Superior. These committees are forming all across the country to really focus on local efforts to reach all residents in hard to count areas. And you'd think that, you know, why would Superior have any hard to count residents? And every community does. And when you really dig into the details, it's a fascinating process. But, you know, census only occurs once every 10 years, and this is the first time it's going to be online. So it'd be a great opportunity to get involved with that process, contact me individually if you can help with that. I'd like to get 5 to 8 residents, and had some response to the article in the Sentinel, but certainly got room for more. So if you're on the fence, contact me and be happy to explain more. Not a ton of meetings and no walking or phone calls involved. So there you go. Today I had an interesting conference call with our U.S. Congressman Joe Neguse, who's opened up an effort to have a conference call on a monthly basis with area mayors in his district, and just an opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with him via phone to talk about issues in the community. I just came off a call about the census, so I asked him about his thoughts on the citizenship question for the U.S. Census, and he said there's going to be definitely discussion in Congress this week when they're back in session, so more to come on that. I wanted to welcome my mom, Jean, who is Superior's newest resident in original town. After a year of remodeling a house, she's not here tonight, so don't look around for her. Where is she? She may be watching on TV, maybe not. Anyhow, welcome, Mom, to Superior. A couple of upcoming events. Next Wednesday, July 17th, we are hosting, Superior Chamber is hosting an event at Wildflower Park for all of the area Chamber of Commerce to come to Superior they do this each year where the chambers kind of have a joint meeting in the summer, and this year it's in Superior. So it'd be great to have those members of the board that can be there and members of the community just to show support for our local businesses and our chamber. So that's next Wednesday, 17th in the evening at Wildflower Park. And July 20th coming up is the Superior Spectacular event, 5 to 8 p.m. Superior Marketplace parking lot, and looking forward to a great event. Our CAPS committee is heading that effort for that event. And there was a link to that event on Facebook in the Sentinel, but I looked on the town's calendar and there was no link there. So maybe look at adding a link on the calendar just so that if people find the event. Yeah, so good coverage on social media. Just want to make sure we're covered on the town calendar as well. So that's it for my announcements. And Matt, any for
thank
you?
you. The town hall meeting that was scheduled for Senator Story and Representative Gray for this Saturday, July 13th, has been canceled. They had a conflict and had to cancel that. So we'll send out an e-blast letting everybody know that that's been canceled.
Are they still doing the drinks event tomorrow?
I haven't heard.
In Senator's, in the email she sent last week, there had been mention of drinks at Brunelleschi's tomorrow instead, but I hadn't seen that widely advertised. So
Yeah.
Okay.
The information I have was about Saturday. We have our next upcoming retreat, July 29th, which is a Monday. So if you have topics you want discussed or considered for discussion, if you could send those to me, and then I'll send out a complete list to the entire board for direction. And then in my last week's retreat, I had mentioned that there was a recommendation from the Transportation Safety Committee to remove the stop signs on Waldona now that it's been closed. So that's the plan moving forward.
Is that just going to happen, or is that coming to the board?
I was not planning on bringing it to the board. I was just going to, we don't typically take install of signs or removal to the board, but wanted to put it in the digest so you're aware of it.
Question for members of the TSC. We have this new old process that we're now following, even though it's been around for a while. Wouldn't this fall under that same process, and wouldn't that process be followed for this?
So that process is specifically for traffic calming measures being implemented.
Not
in the
management
first
measures.
place. Right.
Personally, I don't need to hear about removal of traffic, of stop signs if the TSC is recommending it. I would just defer to the TSC.
Good.
I'm personally concerned about opening up more Waldona cans of worms. Has there been a huge outcry of doing this? And are we going to create more problems by, again, touching Waldona and messing with Waldona?
So we've received, I would say, probably half a dozen
emails from half a dozen people saying, hey, you know, now we've got the street closed and the speed bumps, can we at least take out the stop signs? To your point, we haven't taken it to the broader community.
That's fine. I'm more concerned about the unintended consequences of, again, doing things to Waldona and not having any public comment on it at all. Because I don't know, was it widely noticed? I don't remember what your agenda, was it agended for your TSC meeting?
It was agended, yes.
Okay. My concern stands.
Okay,
That was all?
I think it's fair.
okay.
So just from a policy perspective, if you want to put something on the agenda for the board to talk about, put it on the agenda for the 22nd. So,
Okay. Dan?
Nothing to report other than what was in the memo.
Okay, thanks. And Phyllis? All right, thanks. All right, we're now on to item 2E, which is public comment. If you have public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items, now is the time. So, welcome, Gladys.
Gladys Forshey, 404 South 3rd Avenue. I have a written comment. For 49 years, I have played the game of Flash in Original Town. The key components are transformers struck by lightning or just blown from wear and tear, tree limbs weighted with snow, the good old hurricane winds in Boulder County, telephone wires sagging to the ground from the top of the poles, et cetera, and et cetera. I'm talking about above ground public utility wires in Original Town. The so stated elements cut the power to residents here in Original Town. We buried our public utility wires on our property when they were installed in 1970. No power means no heat, frozen water lines, no water, no potty, and so forth and so forth. For 49 years, I have asked, yelled, stomped, either town staff or PSCO, now Excel, regarding such scenario. Last year, when Excel contract was done with town board, town manager stated that this year would complete the cycle to have enough monies to bury the public utilities in Original Town. 'Tis 2020 budget time. Therefore, while you can't play the game of Flash, sitting in your 21st century heated and cooled shanties, you can cease the game of Flash for Original Town residents and show us in Original Town that our votes can work and get the Original Town public utility scenario in the 2020 budget and allow us to be up to the 21st century date. Bury our Original Town public utilities. Of course, no action on your part will only continue my comments. I also wanted to say, Boulder Creek Builders is no compliment to the town of Original Town, South End.
Okay, thank you. Additional public?
Matt, have we received the estimate from Excel for the undergrounding in Original Town?
We received, they broke it out into phases, so we received the phase south of the creek, which was in my digest, and I'm waiting to get the other phases so that we can have all the information and board direction based on that information.
When are we expecting that?
They were supposed to have months ago to us, but, you know, within the next month, I think they've made it a priority to get us the other phases costs, so.
Okay, thank you. Let's just stay on Excel.
Yeah, we are, yep, for sure.
and there is Boulder, I'm not advocating for Boulder Creek. I just happen to know that they're hosting something, I believe, Friday at 5 p.m. For the local neighbors that live in that town to get to know Boulder Creek and what their plans are. So Gladys and others that live in that neighborhood, I believe it's 5 p.m. and hopefully you've all been contacted about that this Friday. Okay. Okay, I will, with your permission, I could forward, I can give them your email? Nope,
No.
never mind. Okay. Anyway, I believe it's Friday at 5 p.m.
Okay, additional public comment?
Hi, Sonia Critton, 685 East Wiggins Street. I wanted to actually talk about the path that's going to go through the lanterns. I don't have any opposition as long as it's a bike path. And I'm actually speaking on behalf of several of my clients who are concerned that it could be anything but a bike path. I also am very concerned about the financing structure. As we've seen with the $151 million in TIF, the debacle with the Tesla, the debacle with the other car dealership, the Land Rover, I'm really sick and tired of our tax dollars going towards things that really should be funded by the developer and not the taxpayers. So this should be part of the development, not just for the initial infrastructure of that path, but for ongoing concerns. And I'll tell you what my big concern is. I bought my house, like a lot of people you keep hearing about, with the understanding that that 50 feet of FRICO ditch, which has an underlying water right with the Coal Creek ditch, is not going to have people jogging, walking their dogs, pooping, et cetera, on it. So if you do approve something, I want to make sure that you have 2 fences in there for ingoing and outgoing, because there are fences, there are construction, there are people who go by there all the time. It would not be safe. It would create a liability for the town. But first and foremost, I'm sick and tired of this town picking up the bill for the developers. As the previous developer said, it took him 10 years to find somebody who was this big of a sucker. Let's stop doing that, okay? So let's have the developer pay for the path. If FRICO and Coal Creek are willing to grant that easement, fine, but there needs to be a fence so that people do not access that 50 feet and decide to jog on it, because that would violate our buffer zone and our understanding. So thank you. And also, since we've already bought these debacles with Tesla and Land Rover, I have an idea. Since our men in blue are here, I think it would make an excellent place for a police station.
Thank you. Additional comments?
I have these to give out. Is it okay?
Yeah, just give them to Phyllis, yeah.
I have 8 copies for all the trustees and one for the town manager, Matt. Okay. Good evening, everyone. So what I'm passing out is...
Do you mind starting with your name?
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry.
Thank
I'm
you.
Janet Lee Stroud, and I live on 1104 East Akron Place. And what I'm handing out is a survey report that was done by a gentleman by the name of Steve Jones. So Steve came out to Riverbend Park about 2 weeks ago. He is a highly respected person in the Colorado Parks and Wildlife arena in Boulder County. He has written several books and has been a past president of the Boulder County Audubon Society and Boulder County Nature Association. He holds 2 master's degrees, one from Stanford and one from Boston University, and has been a teacher for the last 32 years in Boulder. So my neighbors, David, Chris, and Sasha, and my husband Charles, and I met with Steve, and we surveyed Riverbend Park 2 weeks ago. So just within 2 hours, he identified 23 bird species, and out of the 23, 20 were nesting species, and it's outlined in that survey. Oh, by the way, I paid for the color copies myself, so it would be really great if you guys took it to the Lou. It's great bathroom reading material. He also did a follow-up survey alone by himself the following day, and he identified 29 species of birds by himself. Last year, he surveyed the Hodson-Harrison Reservoir, and he identified a total of 132 bird species, including a mink. Yes, the kind that you wear. And when he identified the bird species at Riverbend Park, there's 2 birds of special concern. One was called a double-breasted cormorant, and the other is called a snowy egret. The snowy egrets are known to reside in Denver City Park, that's pretty far away, and Wheat Ridge Greenbelt, but I think that they got evicted because of the high rent pay that they were paying over there at those parks. So they decided to come and hang out at our parks. So Steve recommends to continue protect the native shrubs and trees. So in that effort, I've been in contact, just as of today, Kevin Colon, who works for the town of Superior, has given me the green light to go ahead and gather up my volunteers in my neighborhood to take away, to pull out some of the invasive species of weeds behind Weldona area, that walkway. And so far I have 7 volunteers. So if anybody wants to volunteer and pull out some weeds, let me know. He has also stated that other conservation management for protecting the birds and animals that live within the park, and that's listed on that report there that I just gave you. And he stated verbally many, many times while we're walking with him, throughout his survey of the park, he stressed the original builder of the Rock Creek area and the parks did a terrific job of building such an urban park with lots of native trees, shrubs, and grasses to attract so many different varieties of bird species and animals, such as our resident muskrat, Mr. Elmer, I call him. Steve will be back out to survey Riverbend Park next year to conduct another one, and he said that we could have up to as many as 15 observers. So if anybody wants to join me, just let me know and I'll add you to my list. I learned a lot. So I just wanted to say, we all have our own tastes and everything on our taste buds, music. Not everybody likes, heavy metal or millennial music, right? Some people prefer jazz, some people prefer hip hop or, good old rock and roll. Well, not everyone is interested in aggressive play with their children either. So I see a lot of times when I'm walking with my dog and such that fathers and mothers sitting on the park benches or walking around explaining to their children and pointing out the many varieties of the birds around them. And just wanted to also point out that every park in Rock Creek has its own unique key element. And so I would like to note that maybe perhaps, yes, Neil is right, that Zone 3 does need a play structure, but please build it where it will not affect the existing wildlife that we have here. And please, Mayor, and please all the trustees and Matt as well, please do the right thing when you do vote. Please help protect this beautiful park. And there's lots of pictures in there of the birds and everything. Negotiate with the Zaharias people.
Okay, if you could wrap up your comment. You're a little bit over 5 minutes, thanks.
To include a kiddie-style jamboree for those residents who are interested in those types of play. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, good evening. I'm Brett Villette. I live at 912 East Carval Place, and I just wanted to make a comment on the walking path that has been discussed between Carval and Wiggins. First, I'm against it, and for a couple of reasons. One, I think there's a better way for the town to use their money. Second is both of those cul-de-sacs were not designed to be a parking lot where people are going to park in order to walk down this path. My other thought was that if you decide to approve it and build this, my belief is that most people will walk down it once and not want to walk uphill, and then they won't use it anymore. And the last point is, if you did decide to do that, you'd have to have equal access. So then you'd have to take down the gates at Waterford to let the public in to park in the cul-de-sac, and I don't think people in Waterford would want you to do that. So I'm against it, and those are the reasons why. And so I hope you don't vote for that. I think it'd be a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening. Just wanted to thank the board for their service to the Superior Town. I'm Ali Reza Duslan, resident of 745 East Wiggins Street, and just want to follow up on the issue with the pathway and express my opposition to that. And few reasons, and in addition to what was mentioned, I think also this is not really the best way of using the taxpayer money. The other thing is that my family, my wife and 2 kids, we moved from Louisville to this property, and one of the main reasons was because it was a cul-de-sac. We felt that, you know, for our kids who are 3 and 7-year-old, this is a safe place to just walk and play on the street. And, you know, having a bike path or any form of path is going to actually get that from us. So when we were looking at that property, we did our research, and we talked to the previous owner, who happened to be, I guess, part of this board, Rita Dozal. And it seems that this was not at all part of this, you know, the city planning or the town planning. I may be wrong on that, but since that this is something that just came up. And so the other thing is that we've consulted 2 real estate agents, and they mentioned that if there is actually a path here so that we can potentially lose the cul-de-sac kind of feel of that neighborhood, it's going to affect your property negatively by some number between 10 to 20%. And I guess primarily because of the safety, I you know, would like to express my opposition to that construction and plan.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Marcy Strauss, 907 East Carville. I'm not going to talk about my opposition to the Carville-Wiggins Trail. It's already on the record. You know my reasoning against it. And 75% of the neighborhood opposes it. We took a survey. So I ask you to hear us. And I am here to talk in support of a connector through the Lanterns project. If it is a foot trail or a bike trail, it's convenient, it's easy, it's cost effective, especially if you get the developer to pay for it. And I agree with Sonia that the developer should pay for it. I also agree with her that there should be some kind of fencing there, so they don't meander into the other parts. I totally agree with her. And last of all, I support it because it is not going through an established neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Yes.
Every time I touch this, there's an issue. My name is Teresa Clark, and I am a Superior resident. There are a lot of items on the agenda this evening upon which I'd like to comment, but I'm a little distracted by this trail that's proposed between the cul-de-sacs of Carville and Wiggins to even comment that, yes, you should be supporting a moratorium on oil and gas and several other things. And I'd like for you to just kind of take this off the radar screen so that I can become a more productive citizen for the entire community. So I'd like to just back up a couple of seconds and remind you all that the annexation agreement of 1998 preserved you call it Tract H. It's actually the wildlife corridor serving as a residential buffer, and it's supposed to be a wildlife corridor. And I've seen at OSAC and PROSTAC meetings and several meetings, public comments for this committee as well, a great concern for wanting to preserve the wildlife, but I don't see you all unanimously trying to preserve the wildlife in the wildlife corridor as addressed in the annexation agreement that serves as the residential buffer. There once was a thriving prairie dog population, eagles. I have pictures of them. I've sent previous committees or previous trustees pictures of this. This is a wildlife corridor that serves as a residential buffer. It's not a throughway. So I did a lot of research. I have done an open records request. I have all y'all's emails. I have OSAC's emails. I have ProStack's emails. I have residents' emails to try to understand where this is coming from. And frankly, it's coming from one or two trustees and a small population of residents that live on the Wiley cul-de-sac within the Waterford community. And I've already sent you this, which is the map of the survey and petition that we've taken, letting you know that 75% of the residents that live on the 5 most impacted streets oppose this trail. 75%. And so the other thing that I did is in attending the OSAC and ProStack meetings is I reported to them about the petitions, and the head of the OSAC committee said basically that he wasn't going to remove this trail from consideration, even based on the 75% of residents that disapprove of it. And then I went to the ProStack committee meeting, and the head of the ProStack committee said no further action will be taken. And yet both of these leaders of your citizen advisory committee have allowed the clustering of this trail to continue on in the connectivity of Rock Creek to the STC. So I just emailed you guys probably about 20 or 30 minutes ago a picture, because nobody would send to me the list of the trails in terms of public disclosure that were included in connectivity to the STC from Rock Creek, and yet remaining on it towards the end is a trail between Carville and Wiggins. So what I'm asking you is, considering that there is one option to the west that even my 9-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter can get to from Rock Creek to the STC. I'm sorry, I know I'm getting ready to go over, Mayor, I'm sorry, but I've got a lot to say. And then if you approve the connectivity through the lanterns for only a pedestrian and a bicycle path, then you have an east and west connection from Rock Creek into the STC, and you don't need to further disrupt the wildlife in the wildlife corridor by cutting through the center. So 75% of the residents in the 5 most impacted streets oppose a trail between Carville and Wiggins. The trail between Carville and Wiggins will only serve to further destroy the wildlife habitat that this once was. It's like I said, when I moved in, I had juvenile bald eagles in my trees. I had a field of prairie dogs that I could look at. And now none of that exists. Instead, what I see is a bunch of off-leash dogs running on the trail that was opposed by neighbors, and they're just leaving poop behind, and all that does is further discourage the wildlife as well. So please, I sent you the email, just take it off the list and let's be done with this so that Superior residents can move on to other broader issues for our community. Thank you again for listening to me and letting me go a little bit over.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Additional public comment? Sandy?
I'd like to ask whether or not public comment will be allowed after the presentation, staff presentation.
Sandy, we know you are, but you might
No,
introduce
if it's going to be allowed, I'm going to defer to later. Okay. If public comment's going to be allowed after the staff presentation that's upcoming.
On CAPS? No,
on CAPS.
We don't do public comment on after presentation.
Okay, then I'd like to make a public comment.
Yes.
Okay, Sandy Pennington, 3002 Micah Court. I'm a little, I attended the CAPS meeting, both as an interested resident and sort of it's sort of my cup of tea, having helped get the thing started a couple of years ago. I'm here today because I'm afraid that the red flags that were raised at Thursday's meeting might be characterized as concerns about who's in charge. I don't believe that's the problem here. I believe this town has successfully collaborated on these types of projects by putting staff together with the advisory committee, with the board, and we've achieved some pretty good results that way, and I have to trust that that's going to work out this time as well. What I'm most concerned about is whether or not we are utilizing the resources at hand to achieve the best and richest results. What's at stake here is a 5-year master plan that is going to be transformational for the town if it is effectively conducted and includes the right people at the table. And the fear here is that they're not at the table. First, starting with the seated town board. I would encourage the seated town board to be a key player in this, because from the perspective of the aspirational goals of this project, not as gatekeepers. And I think it was misinterpreted by some that those of us who were concerned about the absence of town board participation from those town board members who want to be involved was as gatekeepers. It isn't. It's from the role of aspirers, dreamers, visionaries who can help with the conversation about what do we want this town to be when we grow up. That you've heard from me often, but that's the transformational nature of this project. And I would encourage that the plan be looked at to make sure that those of you up there who want to be involved are involved, because you're going to be seated through this whole 5-year process. I am encouraged. You're going to all win re-election. You're going to be seated. The second people who need to be at this at the table all the time are the CAPS committee. Those people who have been seated as the voice of the residents need to not be checked in with occasionally or reported to occasionally. They need to be at the table. I also believe historical leaders need to be at the table. That would include former mayors, former trustees, former leaders of ProStack, open space committees, historical commissions, perhaps HOA leaders, both the current leadership and the historical leadership, and then a rich process of engagement with interested residents who currently are being relegated to digital engagement, which is one-on-one with your computer. If you've ever been involved with a process like this, that is idea generational, transformative, whatever, you've got to be in the room feeding off each other and the creativity flow. You cannot do that individually at a computer. So it's not about who's in charge here. It's about putting together the elements of a plan that's going to achieve the best result. And participation from all those stakeholders is key. Slow it down, rethink it, and let's be committed to achieving the best result. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Dana Simonson at 1792 Eldorado Drive. I have some handouts here for all of you and for Matt. The subject I wanted to discuss or bring up is to have a business owner's parking compound for business vehicles, those who are residents only of the town. And I've covered 5 areas here: compliance and safety, zoning, aesthetics and usage, liability, and the location, funding, and maintenance of such an area. The whole purpose of this is to provide a secure location within the town where business owners could park their business vehicles overnight, on weekends or holidays, or during personal periods. And all of these vehicles should be part of a normal workday need of a resident business owner. Now, the reason, I'll just be right frank with you up front, I'm beginning a new business within the month here. It's home-based, but I will have a trailer, a 12-foot trailer. And frankly, I don't want to keep it in my driveway or side yard because the HOA would get after me. And I really don't want to put it in front of my house or around the corner because that's not good, you know, for the town. That's not their preference to have extra vehicles that way. I think that that basically this is a safety issue as well as an aesthetic issue because we don't want to impede line of sight or anything near intersections for safety. You know, kids running out from the sidewalk or a lot of traffic. There's a lot of foot traffic in my part of the neighborhood. We don't want vehicles to block snow plows or street sweepers or impede mail delivery or any other of the home service vehicles that run through our neighborhoods. I think what this would do is reduce the number of business vehicles that might be kept at a resident's property. And clearly that would be a daily thing. It would be there at night. It would be there throughout the night and into the morning. I've taken a couple of drives around everywhere from McCaslin to US 36 and both sides of Colton. And, well, I stopped counting at about 40, the number of vehicles that I believe belong to residents and that are branded as business vehicles. So there are a lot of others that aren't branded, but they have a trailer or some other attachment that makes it quite obvious. And so what I'm thinking here is that, you know, we would limit this. We wouldn't have livestock trailers in there, any big semi-sized trailers. We wouldn't have RVs in there. We wouldn't allow stacked or loose materials or sheds or pallets of anything. It would just be to drop off or to hold a business trailer or possibly a car, a truck, or SUV or whatever it might be. And I talked with, you know, we're not going to do maintenance in there either. We wouldn't allow somebody to change the tires or change the oil or kick up a lot of dust, anything like that. I talked with Matt earlier that this might have been mentioned before, but in terms of liability, my feeling here is that any participant would release the town from any liability on damage or loss. They would also indemnify the town if any participant caused any damage to the compound, and that they would annually have to submit proof of insurance as proper coverage for those vehicles. On the location, funding, and maintenance of this, I frankly don't know what interest there would be. I don't know how you would canvass the neighborhood for that or get public input on it. As you know, anytime you just open the door for public input, it's who happens to be in town and interested at the time. But I think this might be beneficial for us. The participants could also pay a monthly fee, something to help maintain this, but it would be secured. We'd expect something like a chain link fence around it, maybe some kind of security topping. If lighting were possible, then fine, pass the cost on to those who participate. I've included in there too a map, and I think the preferred location of all that I've seen around the town is on Honey Creek Lane south of the dog park along that main road. You'll see it marked on the map there. It's kind of a trapezoidal shaped piece of property. It's approximately 50 feet wide at the widest, and then there's a considerable amount of length depending on however you wanted to configure that. The reason I think that site is best is because it's out of sight of the main traffic on Rock Creek Parkway. It's at the very front of the other properties on that road, which are the dog park, the composting area, and then the water treatment facility. So it wouldn't be going all the way down the road and coming all the way back. You know, it'd be right at the beginning. I also looked at something. There's some trailhead property at Colton and McCaslin that the city owns or controls. Also looked at the basketball court on Indiana and Colton. And I think there might be something where we could provide for this. I don't know if it'd be a quarter acre, half acre. Like I said, depends on participation, interest. So I thank you for your time on this. I'd be glad to also speak separately to Public Works or to Open Space Committee, Planning Department, whatever it might be.
Okay,
Thank you
for your comments.
I have a question for Matt and Dan. Right now, the regulations we have on the book is a 48-hour continuous parking requirement, that trailers cannot be continuously parked for 48 hours. And if trailers are moved and then reparked on the same street within 24 hours, it's deemed continuously parked. So you can't have a business owner that's just going to business and then parking at night every single night and getting away from the 48-hour requirement, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I guess I have a question for Matt too. Can you park trailers in the RTD lot if you paid whatever it is, $3 or $4 a day?
I don't know the answer to that. I can find out though.
Okay.
I don't know.
And then I'd be curious also if Guardian Storage has space.
Yeah, I'll find that out as well.
For vehicles and let, sorry, I forgot your name. David, if we could let David know. Thanks. Dana, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Additional public comment?
Good evening, board. Brad Walker, I live in the town of Superior. It's nice to see you folks again. A couple comments tonight. I know Ms. Skladzinski does a very admirable job of updating her blog, and she does a good job with that. I sat in the audience a few months ago where this board somewhat admonished her for not being forthright, not being clear, and not maybe taking some comments out of context. I find, Mr. Ryan, your comments were overly harsh and critical. And recently you decided to use your personal Facebook page to talk about Rocky Mountain Metro Airport. And I find that to be a little bit one-sided, if you will. If you're going to admonish one of your colleagues for not following reasonable rules, then you should have to follow them also. Having said that, and Ms. Skladzinski does a great job with her blog, Mr. Ryan, if it's the board's position that you're going to advocate for restricting touch and goes, as well as user fees like you posted, I can assure you that will be met with a loud thump by the FAA and the board. I know the board has spent $15,000 to try to engage the pilot community, and we're trying to work with you guys. But I would like to remind you, Town of Superior has no jurisdiction over Rocky Mountain Metro, so you need our help if you want any changes. And your comments were not helpful. I've spoken with the Vice President of Government Affairs at AOPA, and he assures me that your interpretation of AOPA's article is completely wrong. He also assured me that if you wanted to reach out to him, he would willfully take your phone call. Mr. Ryan, you have resources that I can't even access because of your position as an elected official. I would strongly suggest this board take advantage of those to make sure that you don't fall into a trap of advocating for some kind of user fees or touch and go landing restrictions. In addition, a couple weeks, town of Louisville is going to be holding a public forum reaching out. I've reached out to Mr. Magley. He was generous enough to respond with some comments. It looks like the town of Louisville has taken the leadership position on this. I would like to remind the board that if you go into this thinking that you're going to take input from constituents and take that back to the airport as if it was dogma or some kind of restriction, once again, you're going to be met with a loud thump. The airport is going to just turn their backs. The pilot community is just going to turn our backs to you guys, and we're just going to walk away. So if you need our help, we're willing to help, but don't let this forum turn into an opportunity for your constituents to pump up their chest and advocate for things that are unlawful and clearly are not reasonable. Lastly, the Boulder County, I understand Boulder County's engaging with Jefferson County over this. I can't see how that's going to be beneficial. It just seems to me that that's just a ramping up, an escalation, if you will, of efforts against the airport. And that, like I said, Boulder County has no jurisdiction over the Rocky Mountain Metro. And, that's an escalation that I don't think was going to be beneficial to everyone. So have a good night.
Okay. Any additional public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to presentations. And tonight we have a presentation from our CAPS committee.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Tonight we have members of the Cultural Arts and Public Spaces Advisory Committee here tonight to give the board an update on the the master plan that they're working on with Happy City. Linda Tan is here, Debbie Yates, and Claire Dixon, and Marcia. Oh, hey. Who's, are you going to? Okay, Patrick, go ahead. Yep.
Patrick Hammer, town staff. Thank you, Manager Magley. We've got the members of CAPS here this evening. After our initial meeting with Happy City, and a large number of emails began kind of bouncing back and forth, and it was pretty evident that not everybody was on the same page. I think we're all in agreement this is too great of a project to let it kind of flounder or go on much further without getting a lot of clarity on roles and responsibilities. So I think tonight's just really a good touch point. Clarity for staff, clarity for the committee, clarity for the board, really in an effort to maybe streamline some of the communication and emails that are going back and forth. And then to, again, just kind of open up the dialogue. If tasks need to be readjusted, you know, if engagement needs to be readjusted, Happy City remains completely open to that, and so does staff. You know, they threw out a template that they've used previously on successful projects. We at the time thought that sounded like a reasonable format, seeing that they're the experts in this. But if it's not for us, it's not for us. And I think that now's just a good time to really kind of hash that out. Happy City did have a handful of questions, just in terms of who they should be dealing with more. And I think we tried to assure them what staff's role, what town board role was, and what committee role is. But they actually thought it'd be a good opportunity to use that as part of this process in building what is ultimately kind of a great plan for a great city, is finding out ways that the three can interact with each other. So with that, I you know, we hadn't prepped much, but I do want to make sure that we're having lots of open dialogue about it. It's a great process with a great group, and we just want to make sure that we're doing what's right by the board and right by the committee. So if anybody from CAPS has any thoughts or ideas, I will say staff did notice that there is kind of a divide internally that we started seeing within the CAPS members. So maybe that's something that we can have an open conversation about, just so we're all on the same page going forward.
Okay, thanks for that introduction. Melinda.
So, Linda Tan, co-chair of CAPS. It's all very exciting, but when we first learned about Happy City, we were drawn to that particular company because of the book that they've written, Happy City. So I hope all of you will read that. But it's like nothing we've done before. So the concept of Happy City is nothing is top down, right? It is not, it's not us telling them what to do. It is them going to the community, and it's bubbling up from the bottom. And it's a cohesive community vision. And so their strategy and their success has been in tapping everyone in the community as much as possible to get everyone's vision, to create an integrated, welcoming town that everyone feels, to create a connection between everyone. Because anyone can just stick a statue in the middle of the park and say, look, come and see it. But that doesn't mean they're going to come and see it, right? And so that's where Happy City, I think, has their brilliance, is they are operating from, they call it a psychological well-being. They're looking at so many aspects of a community. It's not just, hey, this park is pretty, you know, as I mentioned, stick a statue here. It's not about that. It's creating, like I said, a welcoming environment. And so these are things that we can't do from the top. We can't, as much as we all can say we know Superior better than anybody else, we need their input. We want their input. We want their inspiration. We want their expertise. They've dealt with the city of Auckland. They've dealt with Vancouver. They've dealt with Denver. We don't know what we don't know, and we want to be inspired. And once we have their vision, once we get all of their research and community engagement starting in August, they will present it to CAPS, and then CAPS and hopefully the trustees will have an ongoing dialogue with them with what they have come up with. And then it will be our job to say, whoa, you were way off base, or wow, we've never thought of that. That's incredible, right? And so we will have months of guiding them. And then, hopefully CAPS will have lots of input and information for trustees to constantly get feedback. And then, of course, you all always have the final decision. And even when this, it's a plan. So, and even when we have the plan with the goals and the missions and the inspiration, CAPS and the trustees will ultimately always have the decisions about what to do with the goals. If we have the funding for a sculpture in an area that Happy City says you need some attention, I think this is the ideal place, then we will probably, I assume, go through the same process that we went through with the roundabout sculpture, right? So, where we got your input, and then you all, of course, make the final decisions on the action. So, it's a little bit of a different process. Their concept is bottoms up, right? So it's from the bottom up. It's not the top down. So we were willing to go with that. Staff thought it was a good idea. I hope you guys still think it's a good idea. So it's a little bit different, but I think as CAPS, we need to step back for, a couple of weeks and let Happy City do their research and do their community engagement. I would encourage all of you to get in contact and give your input, and, always give your input along the way. And I think that will represent the town. So we're really excited about it, and I hope you guys are too, so.
Okay. Melinda,
Yeah.
question for you. Patrick alluded to some disagreements within the committee. I've heard bits and pieces of this, but I'd just like to hear it from you direct as to kind of what your take and what's going on, and how we perhaps could help if we can.
I think I just mentioned it. I think that it doesn't come from the top down. I don't think it's the trustees and unfortunately there was a lot of confusion about Happy City using the word stakeholders as if those were the only decision makers at the table. As Sandy said, that's not the way that they work. So it's not as if he interviewed the 6 people and he was making a draft plan based on those 6 interviews. That's not the way that they work. It was just a snapshot of Superior for that small time that he was in town. And so I think that there was some misconception about people's views not being heard and not being weighted. And I just don't think that's how Happy City works. So that's why I was saying maybe respect the process, respect the professionalism, Happy City, respect their success, and let's see what they come up with within the next 2 or 3 weeks. I encourage you all to talk to Mitchell and then be engaged going forward when we have our meetings with him every month. There was a lot going on. Does that make sense? Does that clarify anything?
A little.
I know.
I mean, are you concerned that he's not meeting with enough people?
I think people were concerned that their voices were not going to be heard. And
I'd heard some discussion about, well, maybe they should or shouldn't talk to the chamber, should or shouldn't talk to economic development, and that sort of thing.
There's no should. I mean, he's open to talking to anyone and everyone. So that's what they do. So I think maybe there was confusion about when people have an opportunity to do that. So everyone wants an opportunity. I think there was some confusion about whether certain voices were weighted over the rest of the communities, and that's not how they work. They work from, like I said, they want to talk to everyone in the community and find out what everybody wants. And this is a super, we are so busy right now with the main event and the 4th of July, and we were just as shocked by how fast this was all going too. So I understand that there was, a little bit of deer in the headlights about how fast the process was going, and we we understand and we agree. So it's going very fast, but, so I think there was some issues about that. And then the role of CAPS. So I think everything is so different right now. So we have Dina on board, who is fantastic. And so, you know, she's doing things that the previous staff person did not do. And so we were all riled up thinking we had to do things. And then Dina stepping in and Patrick stepping in and doing things that behind the scenes that we weren't aware that they could. So we're in an adjustment period too. So, for everyone to streamline the process going forward, I think is important. Debbie, do you have anything?
So Melinda, I really liked what you said at the beginning about nothing should be top down. It should be a cohesive community, a vision. I completely agree with you on that. My concern is that I worry that the process we're following right now is a bit top down, not from board, not from staff, but from Happy City themselves. I really just have concerns that, to your point, they had 6 interviews to get a snapshot of Superior. I would really like to see them conduct a very broad engagement process before coming out with that first draft. Otherwise, I worry that it is town money that we're spending on consultants who are going to give us a product that doesn't necessarily involve as much input as we'd like to give it the community flavor. And so to that end, I think looking at the engagement plan, I'm just worried that there really are only a few opportunities. What I'd like to see Happy City do is broader engagement. To former trustee Pennington's point earlier in public comment, use as many people in the town as possible, not as gatekeepers, but as visionaries that can help add the color and definition that will make it a customized plan for Superior. And so to me, it's really about broadening that engagement, not necessarily getting more people involved from a decision perspective, but just really providing as much color as possible into that plan before Happy City comes out with it.
And I think that's what they're planning on doing. So I just don't know the where or when. And
right. And looking at the timeline, right. I'm just concerned there's really only the July 20th main event date, the July 17th or 18th date for the well-being workshop, which that also concerns me that we're 9 days away, and I don't know that the stakeholders have been identified with that. So I don't know that we're going to get the best engagement that we can if people can't prep for it. And it's really just those 2 opportunities for input. Otherwise, it's the Happy City Talk, which is more pushing information out to the community. So with only 2 opportunities for the broader public to give input, again, I just don't know that what Happy City comes out with later this fall is going to be specific to Superior. I think it's going to be more their vision versus the input from the town.
And to that point, that's actually, I think, the feedback that's probably most helpful for us is we can kind of figure out how to rearrange those priorities. The main event on the 20th being kind of the first kickoff, which has been advertised. There was some debate over this, again, this 32 stakeholders. Initially, we had thought about using representation from the town's advisory committees. Mm-hmm. So that is queued up and ready to go. We did have some discussions with Mitchell that the Happy City Wellbeing Workshop not focus so much on just advisory committee members and maybe doing a readjustment of those dates to kind of push that out if that's something that the board is interested in. And then on the 23rd, the Happy City Talk, we did actually, to Melinda's point, we're starting to use words that we don't typically use.
Yeah.
We found out that stakeholder was a word that kind of got everybody riled up. And they used the word talk, and we all assumed that it was almost like a lecture base. We've been reassured that it is more of an engaging process. And so maybe there's some room around that July and maybe even into August where the Happy City Wellbeing Workshop is multiple workshops or something along those lines.
So I think that could be really helpful. To your point, so much of the placemaking content is so new to people on the board, on the committees in town. So I think that educational event will be great, kind of get the stage set where people can then think about, oh, you know, I never heard of placemaking. Now here's what I'd like to see. I think that would be great. I am concerned with what's in our packet today that says the goals of the Happy City Talk event are to inform the public of efforts and timelines and present evidence regarding the design well-being connection. To me, one of the biggest goals needs to be getting input from the public. And I'm not particular whether that occurs at the talk, whether it occurs a week or two later once people can marinate on the content. But I think it's really important that it's not just respond to questions from the public, but their primary goal should be getting information from us about what is Superior all about, what is the culture, because that's something they can't research, they can't read about, they need to talk to people and get. And so for me, that's the biggest piece of feedback is I just want to see, I mean, as many meetings as possible to get that input.
And a previous point that former trustee Pennington made is when we hired Dina on, the whole online engagement piece, we're going to take that on as part of staff. Dina, in her previous role as a consultant, has done this type of work before. And I think that there was some confusion that additional dialogue piece wasn't going to be available because it just didn't show up in the scope. Kind of early on in this process when we were looking at balancing all the projects that CAPS had for this year, plus some of the holdover on the roundabout art, the original Happy City, all the bids for the placemaking were in this $80,000 range, and the board had earmarked roughly $50,000. So we started to look at things that we could take on at a staff level to help ensure that we could get the consultant that CAPS was interested in, that town was interested in. So I think something else that was maybe a little bit confusing in this process is it's not captured the communication that staff's doing internally, or that we've collectively worked with CAPS to do during, the main events or Chili Fest, things like that. So we're also planning to have touch points there, much like we do our existing. And again, that was probably more on us, just not because we took it out of the scope and it became a staff role. It's not something that was in front of you guys all the time.
One thing that former trustee Pennington brought up around the digital engagement that I think is really, really great feedback. It can be tricky when you're online interacting one-on-one with a screen and not kind of having back and forth dialogue. One thing I'm thinking back to as far as tools go, in November when we were looking at comments sent into the COGGC about oil and gas, they had a form where people submit their comments, they're immediately posted, and everyone could go see all the other comments that were out there. I think even if we used a format like that, it might help people to kind of build on each other's ideas, get to hear what other people are thinking, and then provide more comments and say, yes, I like that, no, I don't like that. Totally understand that we're somewhat limited on, we can't do everything, but I think something like that might help us get to a little bit more of that community dialogue feel that I think is really critical to our success in this.
And honestly, they might be planning that. I mean, every one of the CAPS members got to meet with Mitchell. We each got, 30 minutes to an hour with him. So it wasn't just the 6 people he talked to, but.
Okay, that's great to hear.
Yeah, so, and, darn it, I forgot what I was going to say. That was really good, too. I'm sure it was.
With regard to what they may already be.
I was going to say,
planning.
So we've only met with him, officially for about an hour, during that meeting. So he could have that planned, right? So we really don't know, the details.
But I guess that's what I'm a little concerned about from the presentation that he gave 2 weeks ago. If he is planning that, then I'd like to see it as part of his plan, whereas what we saw in that meeting, which I know we don't have in front of us today, but that timeline just didn't look like it was robust engagement. So if he is planning that, I want to see him put it on paper and commit and say, yes, we're going to do this, no, we're going to do that. Right. Where I'm uncomfortable is saying, well, we trust them and we hope they're going to do this, but we don't know.
And to your point on timeline, I think something that would probably be helpful for CAPS and for staff is we were really kind of pushing an aggressive timeline because initially we were trying to sync this up with a future budget request, knowing that something may come out of this plan. And we initially had this thing really fast-tracked. In the event something great came out of the plan, we would have it ready for you guys as a budget recommendation this year. It's been stretched slightly into kind of wrapping up in a January time frame. If there is a little bit of room and a little bit of flexibility to widen that, I do think we can probably get back to some of those original goals. Just with the understanding is that we probably won't have a really good sense of any type of budget recommendations for this year or potentially into 2020. So you'd start to maybe see budget recommendations out of the master plan in something like 2021. Or maybe we start to cultivate some ideas kind of early in the process and we can earmark it. But some of that accelerated timeline, we were trying to make sure that we were going to inform potential budget recommendations. But I think what we're starting to hear is it's better to do it right.
Yes, please.
But I want to make sure that we're all on the same page because that's likely to mean that you won't see budget recommendations right away, or maybe we look at kind of saying, well, the top priorities are maintaining what we have or more event-based. So that was kind of, I think, the other thing that really kind of stirred up some additional conversation was timeline and I guess just wanting some feedback from the board on what everybody is comfortable with would give us an understanding on how better set the timeline with the consultant.
Okay, Sandy.
I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed because I had specifically asked that we at least receive an abbreviated version of the presentation that was made to CAPS tonight, because I really wanted the entire board to understand what we saw that night at the CAPS meeting. And part of that is I want to just give to the board members who were not there, because none of us have seen the timeline. I actually just gave them I did not give everybody the complete document, but I did give them the communications timeline, because I think if you'll remember, the communications timeline was the piece I was more concerned about, was that we were compacting it into a very, very tight time frame. And so I've shared that with the rest of the board, because even though I know it is your all's project and I want you to fully own it, it helps when the board sees the overview of various things. For example, if we go forward with a Prost master plan project, we will hear what that process is going to be and what are the avenues for engagement. And right now, the board hasn't received any of that. I mean, now you have it. Even if we had this document included with our packet tonight, it would have been helpful to give the board an opportunity to say, hey, okay, what are we all worried about? And so that to me is a little bit disappointing. I, for one, am concerned that we are packing a whole lot into the month of July. It is the month when 90% of this town goes on vacation. I have looked at every single one of the engagement dates. I cannot attend a single one of them. Unfortunately, I'm a trustee who's very engaged in this. And so the fact that we're packing this into a very, very tight time frame gives me concern that you guys will not get the best the best information you can. And so I know that there was a message from the board that we wanted to see you do a tight time frame because it would impact the budget. We can always leave a placeholder in the budget. I would much prefer that you extend the timeline out on this. I'm concerned about July 20th being your major interaction. You know, as I admitted to you at that night at the meeting, I'm probably not going to be able to go, and I really, as a trustee, would like to see what the involvement is by our community. So if there's a way we can extend the timeline, can we involve engagement at Chili Fest? Maybe that's not the right forum for you, but I really am concerned that we've got a very, very narrow window of participation. And, you know, I, for one, am willing to spend or at least consider some additional money if that'll get us the high quality process. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin and Ken.
first I guess you're welcome to stay or sit wherever. I mean, I'm not sure I think we got some specific questions from Happy City that I guess I'll address, but first just talking about CAPS. Clint does a really cool presentation to the kids, talking about the hierarchy of the town, and it has, town staff, and it's an org chart, right? And it's a cool little org chart. It's got town staff, and it's got, Matt's in charge of the town staff, and then the board, Matt's accountable to the board, and then Clint asks this great question of the kids, who do I work for? And the kids all stump, and then somebody's brave enough to raise their hand, and they say, me? And that's right. We work for you, and we work for the community. And I think that's really important. And the community representative here is CAPS, right? And you guys all applied to be on the committee. I think it's the best committee we have. And now I might be a little biased around that one. But in terms of the first question, I think, Patrick and staff are asking in terms of who should they be getting the guidance from, it should be the committee. Now, we have budgets and we have timelines, and, we operate in, probably a more stricter environment than the Cultural Arts and Public Space Committee would like. You guys are by nature artists, and budgets and timelines are a little bit more science than budget, but you're all professionals and you've guided us just tremendously over the last couple of years, and I would hope you continue to do so. If I, as the representative, see that that's going off the rails a little bit, then I'll bring it to town staff and bring it in. I don't think that's going off the rails. I think you guys are doing a great job. I think the feedback, we all got a little wrapped around the axle on a couple, nouns and verbs. But Happy City is a great entity, and I think, at the end of this process, if this town is unhappy with the deliverable that Happy City produces, I'd be really surprised. I don't see that happening. So while I'm all about kind of doing it right, I want to be, and I don't hear the request for a change order or additional funding or additional time today. If you, in consulting with Happy City, if we need additional money or additional time, please come to the board and ask for additional money or additional time, and I think we'll consider it. But for now, I don't hear that being asked. I recognize that, it's hard to get input during the summer, but it's hard to get input during spring break. It's hard to get input during the holidays. And the cool thing about Superior, when people's express their voice, very rarely is it my backyard kind of voice. It's always what this community needs. That's how people start their sentences here. And I think that's when people are being interviewed, whether or not it's one of the, quote, stakeholders, or one of it's during the talk or the dialogue, or it's one of a representative of the board talking about this great plan that's being created, we're not representing what we as an individual want. We're representing what we heard from the community. And so, I don't like the semi-disruption that's occurring over the last few weeks, but again, unambiguous, CAPS is driving this process, right? If this goes off the rails a little bit, then please come to, I think it's my board as liaison to go offline with Matt and figure out how to get it back on the tracks. And in the meantime, if CAPS and Happy City request a change order off the $50,000 statement of work, please request the change order and this board will consider it. So, and the update, really appreciate the update and really appreciate the hard work that you guys are doing.
So I'm worried we're getting...
Ken and then
Laura. So first, CAPS, thanks for coming tonight, and I appreciate the concerns being brought up and vocalized to make sure we're addressing all this up front and not getting too far down the road before the train is off the station. In preparing for this meeting, in reviewing the staff memo and watching your video of the meeting, and then going back and reading the actual agreement that we have with Happy City, I think all of us sitting up here at the dais need to take a look in the mirror. And all the concerns that we're hearing about the speed with which this is happening is all laid out in Section 2 of Attachment A of the agreement. We have all the dates listed explicitly, so we knew what we were getting into from the outset. Maybe we didn't give it the forethought that we needed to ensure that maybe this is not the right time, maybe it is too fast, or maybe we need 2, 3, 4 more of these sessions to ensure that we're getting enough community engagement. And I think hearing that we need a little bit more is important. So that's on us. If, as Kevin said, if it is CAP's position that we need more, tell us and let's do a change order and let's get more going. As far as the actual questions that came from Happy City, as someone who, my background is coming from the committees, you guys need to be empowered to do the best job you can, because that's why you're here. That's why you volunteered. So whatever we can do as a town board to empower you to do the best job you can, that's what I want to hear. Now, as far as the role of town staff, it is town staff's role to then implement the direction that they get from us and to help you implement the goals and visions that you're working from and what we've talked about and the way you think it makes the most sense to get the job done. So I think that's kind of the path we're on, but that's what makes sense to me. So as far as who should Happy City be talking to and taking direction from, I mean, it's all of us. It's a collaborative process, but I think the day-to-day is probably with staff, because staff is the one who implements. They're the ones that actually work on the contracts and whatnot and take the direct lead from the board, but CAPS is driving the bus to implement the vision. But I appreciate this coming forward to us, make sure we're going down the right path.
Thanks. Laura? Oh, Debbie, go ahead.
Would you like me to sit down?
Would you like to speak?
Sure, let me get it over.
Go ahead.
Debbie Yates, 115 6th Avenue. I think, again, reinforcing we agree on everything, by the way, as a committee. And I think that if you sat in our meetings and you watched them, and we meet twice a month, we're very collaborative. And I think part of what kind of happened is that when we met last, they had the issue with the stakeholders, and whatever that phrase means, I think that we genuinely were concerned that all the reading we have done from Happy City Book and the public spaces for placemaking, which is basically just a word for using public spaces for community events. And I think that when we met on Thursday and through that whole process, we were just ambushed, basically, kind of taken aback and going, because when we saw this, which is Sandy addressed, it was the first time we had even seen this. And so we're sitting in our CAPS meeting going, whoa, what is all this that we really had no idea that was coming, any input in, and then that seeing this, which so much of it we agreed with, the goals and objectives, if you go through this, we agreed with so much of it, but really a lot of that was that philosophy of bubbling up from the bottom. Everybody has a voice. You're not just going top down with interviewing 5 or 6 people originally, but we're all talking to everybody so they have ownership in the master plan for CAPS. And we all are definitely on the same page for that. And looking at the town, basically when you interviewed me, it was like, well, why do you want to be on it? And I'm actually have a finance background, not art. So my perspective is a little bit different, but that whole idea of what makes Superior look good, feel good, be good. And we all have that same goal on here. Real quick, you have this. This was in your packet. Again, a couple things. That feeling of being ambushed. It sounds like a lot of those roles and responsibilities have been fleshed out so that we know that the CAPS committee is basically being honored and not dismissed, which was a genuine concern of ours. Board, yes, definite feedback. I did notice it was kind of interesting. I went back and tried to find the CAPS meeting minutes, and last I saw was January. Is that possible? I don't know.
They are delayed, which
Okay.
is, that's on.
Okay, because I mean,
right,
we know that
I think we're current through March, I believe.
Okay, because I know that
Not that that's current.
Terry Whitaker from CAPS takes amazing notes. Now, they are not official notes, but she does a wonderful job with this, and she's current on all of these. I think the process and the timeline is too fast.
that we need to make it right. We need to talk to people. We need to feel comfortable. And the CAPS committee as an entity has literally put in thousands of hours, literally. You know, looking at all this stuff and reading and doing all the projects. And so we really want to make sure it's right. And we want it to be bottom up type thing. I love Laura's idea of the well-being workshops and having multiple workshops. And if you have time, go into, well, read the Happy City book, first of all, but Charles Montgomery has a TED Talk that's really interesting, if nothing else. Go in and listen to his TED Talk about what makes strong cities, strong communities, and that type of thing. And again, I think one of the things that made it a little bit hard for us to do the plan, it was on page 3 in here, provide preliminary research. We don't have any cultural arts creative assets really, other than just very small sculptures. So when we were doing the whole walkabout, it was based on parks. So that makes it a little different than a lot of other towns, because we have no, you know, libraries, we have no performing arts, anything like that. They don't exist yet, which is the hope of the master plan. So hopefully that will come to fruition. And when you're thinking of placemaking, and I was at the 4th of July thing, first of all, Deanna did a fabulous job in staff on the 4th of July. Great music, great food, great organization. Everybody in the community coming together from, you know, really a main event that came off so well. And that's exactly what placemaking is. You take a place, community park, put a fabulous event in it, and bring the community together, which is what placemaking is. So, thank you.
Thank you. Laura, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, so I'd like to see if we can engage in kind of some back and forth dialogue among the board rather than just going one by one down the line. I mean, I think we're getting really caught up in the term stakeholder. I personally don't care what we call it. My concern is just that if we're looking for people to speak on behalf of the community, so far with our process, we've left out so many of the community leaders. We've done 3 one-on-one interviews. We've done the pro staff, the Superior Youth Leadership Council, and CAPS. To me, that means we haven't heard from some of the historical leaders in town, some of the former mayors, the trustees, the HOA leaders, some of the other people that former trustee Pennington called out in her public comment, which I agree with her. I think we need to get more of the community engaged, whether that's leader of the Mod Moms or people who can speak on behalf of the community. I'm afraid we haven't done that yet.
That's kind of our job as CAPS, right? So we're letting Happy City do all of their research right now and letting them do their process. And
So
then when
this
they come
should be
back
part
to
of their research.
but now we're telling them what to do. So let's just let them do their research first. And then when they come back to us in August and they present to us their initial findings, it will be up to CAPS to say, whoa, you've missed a population. You've missed, you know, you brought up the moms groups, and that will be up to us. Or you've missed the historical perspective, which I don't think, you know, I'm not on the historical commission, but when I went for a walk in Grasso Park with Mitchell, I mean, I was talking about the historical parts, and we went for a tour, you know, in that area. So I think it's highly unlikely that he's going to miss any piece. And if he does miss a piece, then that's our job. And so when we meet with him, that's what we're going to say. You've missed the boat, or, you know, maybe you need to talk with these people or those people. Now, I do think that we should, you know, postpone, or not postpone, but, you know, prolong the community engagement. But, you know, what I'm hearing from you is this is the divide, isn't it? You are saying he needs to talk to this person, this person, this person, this person, and that's kind of top down.
I think it's important anytime you start a project to first start with the broad background. Right. I think from what he's done so far, he hasn't gotten that broad background.
But we don't know yet, do we?
We don't know, but I don't want to wait for it to be off the rails and then have to spend money to course correct.
Right, so which is why I think it's a good idea to elongate, but I just think that we should just wait.
So first, good reminder that let's try to have a dialogue and not shoot down the line, right? Because we don't want to do that. And so for those watching at home, if you see the dialogue, we're not interrupting each other. We're trying to change the culture of, you know, trying to encourage that. CAPS hasn't thrown the flag yet, right? I mean, this is, we work for them, not they work for us. And that's what I want, and maybe they will have to throw the flag, but this is not, this is not a application. We're not changing zoning. I want to do two things. Number one, suggest that there is a pretty detailed level of engagement, or they're going to have that workshop with up to 32 participants. And at the end of that workshop, if they say, you know what, I don't feel like I have the pulse of this community, there's something really unique here because there is no community center, there is no artistic center. I can't talk to the director that does the local children's theater because you guys don't have a children's theater. It's crazy, right? That's definitely possible, and Mitchell may come back and say, I need more time, in which case I think we could do that. So the first comment, I think we need to, I have some confidence in the process, not because I know anything about this, because I have not yet seen CAPS throw the flag. I've seen them, kind of reach for their pocket once or twice, but it hasn't been thrown. Once they throw the flag, then we jump in. Second, I do want to put this in perspective. This is a master plan, right? And so this is not a concrete written in stone document that says we are going to build a library by 2021 that says the following, that does the following thing. It is a plan that hopefully it's a good one that we will strive to execute on, and that will be the job of staff, and that will be the job of this board. But for now, it's a plan. And I think getting the voice of the community is important. They've done this so many times. We have such a committed committee. So I just want to reinforce that kind of the trusting of the process here.
But this isn't art. This isn't us telling an artist how to do his work, right? This is guiding a consultant to create a useful master plan for placemaking that can have the transformational impact that we're hoping that it'll have to help us identify the identity of the town, right? And we all know that Superior is a wonderful town, right? We know that it's full of creative people and it's a really cool place to live and a great place to raise a family. But a lot of people don't, right? People who don't live here think it's a bedroom community, a planned development that doesn't have a soul, right? Highlands Ranch North. And now, thanks to the creativity of CAPS, the vision of CAPS, the support from the board that we've given to CAPS, we have an opportunity to really embrace this transformational process. And I really agree with what Sandy said before. I'm disappointed that we didn't get a presentation because I kind of feel out of the blue. I wasn't at the CAPS meeting. I haven't seen what the presentation was that was given, and I think that would have been beneficial. My concern that was raised at that meeting was, this is a 6-month process that all of a sudden there's going to be, a reporting to the board in January with the presentation of a master plan without actually any input from the board. And this isn't, to me, about giving direction from the board. It's not about micromanaging, but it's about not squandering an opportunity to tap into the knowledge base that we have to get the best work product that we can hope for, that we could actually use and implement. That'll have the defining impact that we want. So I don't need to micromanage any consultant. I just want to make sure that the consultant that we're hiring is actually tapping into the right people that have the knowledge and desire and the experience to really offer something that will be beneficial for this plan. So I couldn't agree with Sandy Pennington more in terms of talking to the board, talking to previous board members, talking to CAPS committee, absolutely historical leaders, current residents, anybody that really feels that they have something that can, anybody who has a desire to lend their voice to this process, I think should be heard. And that isn't micromanaging. It's just, we don't want to leave good ideas, on the table, because one of the things that I'm concerned with is just in terms of being good fiscal stewards of town dollars, taxpayer dollars. We hired a consultant with the Planning Commission without clear guidance from the board, and then when we saw work product, the board was unhappy with it, and that ended up being, I think, a wasted opportunity to actually get something right. And if we actually, if ultimately the board is who's going to be implementing this plan, at a minimum, the board needs to kind of have an idea of what's going on, right? It shouldn't be something that's just presented out of the blue in January for the first time, and voila, we've got a master plan. Because that's how things go off the rails. So, you know, I don't think that I think it's a false dichotomy to look at it from it's either top down or bottom up. You know, it's really, there is a knowledge base that we need to tap into. And, you know, for the people who are interested in it, get interested and involved in it. Because otherwise, I'm just concerned that we're going to spend a bunch of money and get a document that either we can't use and implement or we don't like. And then we're going to say, well, why did we spend all this, you know, the past 6 months doing something when we could have avoided some of those problems at the outset? So, you know, I really think that this is a, you know, once in a lifetime opportunity for the town in terms of defining the identity of like who we are and who we want to be. And, you know, we should get it right. So we should embrace that opportunity, embrace that challenge, but just make sure that we're not rushing into it. So we actually have a product that we can use.
So, and on that note, one of the questions that we kind of in discussing with CAPS is, I know Trustee Lish, a while ago, you had requested updates frequently from CAPS on this process. We thought this might be a good opportunity to kind of formalize that a little bit more. Is the board interested in seeing something as a formal update? Happy City will be working with CAPS monthly, not only from an update, but a feedback collection standpoint. And is there an appetite or a need to provide the board monthly written information? I think we're all happy and excited to do that, actually, as a way to keep the board informed. And just wanted to kind of take your quick temperature on, is it a formal board meeting? Is it a digest item? Is it something that comes from CAPS, from Matt or myself? Was something that we had a dialogue with CAPS or members of CAPS and Happy City?
Personally, I'm happy with it being a digest item or an email from CAPS, and then we can certainly put it on a board agenda if there should be discussion. I mean, to Mark's point, I don't want to micromanage it. It's not me saying you have to report back to us and then we'll say yes or no, but I think just getting those updates would be helpful so that we can weigh in as needed.
And I'd like to hear CAP's opinion on it. I probably fall on the other side of things. I think it's more valuable to actually have you guys during this exact time slot come and give us 3, 4, 5 minute quick presentation, give us the pulse of things, and so you can get feedback from us on questions you might have, and it just makes things that much more effective and efficient, at least in my past experience. But yeah, certainly don't want to micromanage, and whatever works for the committee and staff, I would defer.
I think my comment, it kind of comes back to what Mark said, and I said this at the CAPS meeting. I'm concerned that if you don't engage with us sort of publicly, I'm not sure how carefully we all read the digest. And so I'm afraid if we don't get a public report, you know, maybe once or twice in the next 6 months, it won't be as valuable. I am concerned about what happened with the Planning Commission and the Northwest Superior project. I recognize this is very different, sort of an activity than that, but because the board didn't feel like it was engaged enough with during the process, it went off the rails as far as some of the board was concerned. I don't happen to be one of the people who had a concern with what happened with the Planning Commission, but some of my colleagues were concerned, and the fact that any of us were concerned presents a problem. And so I really I would be preferable that we get a couple of verbal reports, even if it's, you know, middle of August, you come in and say, hey, you know, this is what happened at the engagement session on July 20th or July 18th. This is our perspective of what we've seen and heard, and I'd like to hear from you whether you felt like you got what you thought you were going to get out of it or not.
So I don't know what the digest is, and I'm sorry if I'm in the dark about that, but it was fully, we want your input, right? And so that's why this is important, to streamline this process, because we want you engaged every step of the way. That's what Patrick said, whatever that looks like. You know, if you want reports, if you want us to stop by every meeting, you know, we want you engaged the whole way. I just don't know what that looks like in an official manner, so I haven't had any opinion about that. I don't know if you watch the meetings or you read the minutes or I don't know. So I do want the best way to get your feedback all along, because it's everybody's plan. And that's why I think it's a good idea to extend the community engagement process, because we want all of you to be included. So,
Linda, the digest is called the weekly digest, and that's a report that the town manager does and sends to the board. So it's generally not a public document. It's more of an internal, here's what's going on this week with respect to news and updates for the board. So from my perspective, I'm kind of leaning on the side of having you come into presentations and hearing a live update and being able to have a dialogue. So I don't know that it's not every meeting. It may not be every month, but it's on some kind of a regular
kind of
basis.
drawn back on previous, maybe it's scheduled post public engagement opportunities. So it's a quick, and we've done that on previous projects. So as we're maybe kind of reworking the timeline, like work with the manager to maybe try to schedule some of those in if that feels like a solution that works.
Good.
Yeah, just looking back at the May board meeting when we actually approved the Happy City contract, the presentation that we had from Happy City was not Superior specific, it was placemaking specific. And this is what we do as Happy City, and this is why it's important. And these are the experiences that we've had with previous cities that we've worked with, right? And why it's great. And the board said, that sounds great. That, we're going to support that. We approved the contract. For us to go from there to all of a sudden, January with a finished product without any kind of interim direction, to me seems like a really short-sighted way of going about doing things, and just prone to not being happy with the work product. So I think a presentation to the board of, okay, we've done some preliminary due diligence about who the town is. This is who we've spoken with. This is who we probably still need to speak with. These are some of the opportunities that we're identifying. These are some target areas that we're thinking about. These are some of the things that we think. What do you think? And then just have a little bit of a dialogue. Then I think we're not doing the top-down, micromanaging, but we're at least having some input to make sure that, oh wow, we're going to get our money's worth here. We're on the right track towards, a document that we are going to enjoy and implement.
Well, and you guys, I'd like to
Debbie, do you mind coming up? Yeah. Just want to make sure we capture your comments.
I like Sandy's comment at the board meeting last Thursday, because her comment was, they don't know us, and they may not even know Patrick or Dina, but they know you. So if Sandy's at the grocery store and someone at the grocery store knows her and comes up and asks, what is going on with this? Tell me about this main event. Tell me what you guys are doing. So again, I think that communication, I'd like to see in the meeting minutes a little bit more updated, so I could say to someone, oh, this is what we're doing, and they could go to the website and see those meetings. That would be wonderful. But I think that we would love to have you in the loop. So you're out there, you're going to be at the main event, you're going to be at Chili Fest, wherever, answering those questions, and we want you to know what's going on so you can let people know and promote it, basically. So we love that idea.
Okay, anything further?
I think one more just comment that I think also probably would have alleviated at least some concerns from the board, that in the future when we do things like this might help at least in gaining the board perspective. My understanding is, Clint, you were interviewed by the Happy City. What might be more useful going forward is to put the invite out to the entire board and see if we can do a group interview or see if multiple interviews are needed. But I know at least both Laura and Sandy were at the meeting, the CAPS meeting last week, and I know they're passionate about it. I know I would have tried to meet as well. So I think trying to get that upfront discussion with the whole board, and then Clint, I'm sure you said great things. I have no idea. Just making sure the whole board has an opportunity.
Well, and I assumed all board members were going to be.
We've had discussions with them recently about touching base with each of the board members. So that's what I plan on doing.
And so that to me reveals a little breakdown in the way this thing is working. The fact that, it wouldn't have even occurred to the mayor to ask the board to say, like, are you all being interviewed too? Because he assumed we all were, right. Just as I would have. If they approached me, I would have assumed that the invitation would have been put out to the entire board here. So I think it's good that we're, pumping the brakes, making sure that we're not getting, ahead of ourselves here, and just making sure that, the right stakeholders, or whatever we're going to call ourselves, are involved in the process before we get too far down the road.
So along those lines, one of the things that came up in the meeting was the fact that in our initial contract, we had said there would be 6 interviews, not more than 6. At the time when I read through the contract, it does say in there, they might be one-on-one, they might be group interviews. I assumed, so maybe that was my fault, but I thought it would be 6 big group interviews and we'd get lots of stakeholders involved. In that CAPS meeting 2 weeks ago, it sounded like we've used up our 6 and that's it. We might have to approve more budget to do more. Is that accurate? Are we okay to now do more engagement with Mitchell and with Happy City?
Yeah, we'll work through the logistics with them on that and see where we're at. Come back to the board if we need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just where I have concerns, not with CAPS, but with Happy City and kind of the process is, can we define what is the broader list of people that we want to speak with? What are the outcomes we're hoping to get so that we make sure we have our bases covered?
Well, and in the spirit of the open dialogue, I think that's a hard thing for staff to do because...
Yes, not staff, but Happy City themselves.
So how does Happy City, I mean, staff can put them in touch with all our committees, with CAPS, with us, within the governmental realm. I love the idea of Mod Moms. I think those are the types of connections, getting our previous leaders, I think those are the connections we need to bring forward through just normal public engagement. And that puts the onus on us, puts the onus on CAPS to go out and we activate our community to say, we need you to come out and talk to us. I'm not sure that's on staff or Happy City to go find, because frankly, they don't know the answers. That's the people, the residents who know that. So that's on us, in my view, to go out and bring them. And we need to facilitate getting 1, 2, 3, however many more it is, opportunities for the broader community to come in so they can actually hear from those people.
I think you're right. It's on us to activate the community. But again, I think Happy City should be asking the questions about who should we be talking to? And it sounds like they haven't asked that question yet, or if they have, they haven't gotten the full answers of everyone in the community they should be speaking with.
Yeah, and I still think that's on us. We need to say who to go talk to, and we can't force people in the community to talk to them, which is why we need to put it out there. And then
we can't. It's a joint effort. But yeah. I mean, as a consultant, I'm often in this situation where I'm coming into a company. I don't know what I don't know, and yet I have to figure out how to engage the people I do know to get to the people I don't know. So I just want to see that process work a little more smoothly in the future.
That's fair. Okay. Anything further? All right. Good update. Good work. Thank you very much for your efforts on this. All right. We'll move on to item number 3, which is our consent agenda. It's 9 o'clock. Consent agenda. Okay. All right, 30 minutes behind. Hear a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. Motion by Trustee Lish.
Second.
Second by Trustee Hammerly. All those in favor?
Oh, yes,
okay.
Sorry.
Sandy, are you? Okay. Oh, yeah. Passes unanimous. I was blocked by Kevin. I couldn't see Laura. Then Ken put his hand down. Then Sandy put it. It all fell apart there. All right. Consent agenda has passed unanimously. On to item number 4, approval of resolutions adopting the 2019 Water Conservation Plan for Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 in the town of Superior. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks, Mayor. This is an update from the Water Conservation Plan that was last adopted in 2011, and it's governed by state statute. Alex has I think it's a short presentation from memory, and then we can open it up for questions from the board and seek adoption.
Alex Arnell, Director of Public Works and Utilities. This is a presentation of the 2019 Water Conservation Plan. Water Conservation Plan is required by the state statute and by the Colorado Water Conservation Board. It's also required as a condition of our participation in the Windy Gap project. We last updated it in 2011. And there are specific guidelines put out by the Colorado Water Conservation Board on what goes into these plans. So we've followed those. It also requires it be posted and public input be sought. And this was done on May 9th. It's been on our website, and we did receive a comment that has been addressed in the final plan. We retain the services of Murray Smith, and I have Joel Price here from Murray Smith, who will be walking you through the presentation, and Jim Widener on our staff oversaw the project. So, Joel?
Good evening. I'm Joel Price from Murray Smith, and this should be a pretty short presentation here. See if I can get this thing to play. As I say there. I'll just run this way. Here's the history here, the background that is, and we're going to get into little graphs, some numbers here. So it could be a little high, try to keep it as high level as possible. But any questions you have, feel free to ask and what have you. In the presentation, we'll have time for that, but we can also have them during it. But in 2004, the Water Conservation Act was passed, and the Colorado Water Conservation Board, which is also known as CWCB, and I'll refer to them as CWCB throughout the presentation here, required all communities that were sailing over 2,000 acre-feet of water per year to provide these and update these plans so they'd have some measures in place with water being what it is in Colorado and being such a valuable resource. There's also twofold here, like Alex just mentioned, as part of being in compliance with the state, and if any funding you want for raw water projects, you have to have one of these on file and in good standing. And I will mention too, and I'll kind of update this at the end, but this report has already been conditionally approved by the state. So you are looking at something that has already been validated and approved and will be updated for you guys moving forward from 2019 and projecting into 2030. So here are some of the key components that CWCB, because again, Colorado Water Conservation Board, requires that this report covers: profile of existing water system, water demand and demand management, integrated water efficiency and supply planning, selection of water efficiency activities, and implementation and monitoring plans. And those are noted as sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the report. Here's a little background here. Obviously, this is your community. Population in 2017, consensus, the U.S. consensus was around 13,000. It's located in the lower basin of Boulder Creek watershed, surrounded by agriculture and urbanized areas, and provides water and sewer to the community. Here are some of your water sources and yields that you have water rights for. The number to most pay attention to is at the bottom there. Total raw water supply, I mentioned earlier, 2,000 acre feet. You have capacity to supply 4,000 acre feet according to your rights. Most of that is in your bigger trans-basin sources, such as CBT and Windy Gap, but also in some ditch shares, but no wells. It's all surface supply water. Here's some trends we have been able to look at with Jim's support, providing us data to look at 2013 through 2018 to establish the forecast moving forward as well. So the blue line is your potable water usage, and the green is your total. That combines commercial and irrigation usage. They obviously go up and down in the summer months.
Do you mind if we ask questions just during the presentation?
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
So you mentioned wells. Are there, I spent some time in Original Town yesterday, and I noticed there's a couple wells in Original Town. Are any of those wells currently used for irrigation? No?
No.
Okay. Thanks.
As a matter of fact, I don't think any water source you have in this town is used by, anything you see here is all surface supply, so there's no well usage at all. So back to the trends we were seeing the last 5 years. Again, the green is the total and the blue is the potable. The potable is tied mostly to the residential units, and the green is, again, in addition to the residential, is commercial and irrigation supply. We wanted to kind of get a more accurate projection on population gain. I think it's still slightly conservative, but it's better to be conservative on your growth and, you know, not have enough people and then not have enough water sort of thing, or not conserving enough water you need for your demand. This is the developments you have underway, and as you can see, the completed dates start in 2020 all the way through 2027. So that carries through the next 7 years, if you will, 8 years. The population projection is based on those units they have in those developments and multiply by 2.5 to get your population gain per unit. So that's saying that everybody was saying that those developments will be fully occupied in those years. So another important number to pay attention to is that bottom number, 4668. We took that number and divided it evenly throughout the next 12 years.
Alex, I have a nit on that last slide.
Sure.
Rogers Farm isn't a development. When I think about a development, I mean, they took the area that was plotted 100 years ago and used it to build houses. If somebody wanted to use I don't want anybody to look at this slide in the future and think that Rogers Farm is a development that ever came to this board and was approved. It's not a development. It's just use by right. It's not.
Okay. The purpose here was to identify.
I understand for
areas,
growth,
right?
but it's a net that I have. So for the record, Rogers Farm is not a development.
Well, and some of it was plotted, but some of it is going to come to us for approval.
I don't doubt that some will come to us for approval, but the 70 units that are noted there are plotted just as, original town is roughly, what's the number? Only about 40% built out?
There's about 24, 27 lots that are in the original Superior. The balance is the PUD that may come before this board at some point.
Right.
So,
but is the 70 inclusive or exclusive of the?
Inclusive of the.
The 70 is inclusive?
Yes.
Both pieces. Okay, so it's both pieces. Okay.
Okay. So again, we took that total population based on those residential units and population gain, dividing them evenly throughout the years, projecting into 2030. That's a requirement by the state to take it out to the next decade. This plan actually will need to be updated in 2025 as well. So there'll be some new projections there, but the 1.96 up there was what we found from the U.S. consensus again to get us to date, if you will, roughly 13,400. Then projected growth is upwards of 18.5. These are some of the formulas we came up with to develop those demands from those populations you saw on the previous slide. The residential is tied directly to population. The commercial is tied to taps, and so is the irrigation. That is also, irrigation build out is assumed to occur in 2021, so you have no more taps to provide unless you were to annex more property into the town. This is a kind of a simplified version of the data you saw before to get our projections, but thought it may be a little more representative than looking at another graph here, but it shows basically the population in the black line and then the water usage going up. Those are not entirely directly correlated with one another because some of those are commercial and irrigation is the green, and again, the blue is the residential. So that kind of takes care of section 3 of the report. I've kind of went through 2 and 3, 1, 2, and 3. And then now we get into efficiency activities. And this is what the town is currently has on file and is doing. So I just kind of bounced around here some of the functional activities or meter testing and replacement program, ordinances such as time of day, green building ordinances and programs, technical, targeted technical assistance such as retrofits and replacement of indoor and outdoor fixture fittings, and educational outreach such as bill stuffers and newsletters for conservation tips. And this is the projected goals that you would have in the next 10 years, continuing on as you are. 3.5% savings. You'll see the one to the right there again is more related to non-potable source, and it drops off due to the fact that you won't have taps to provide after 2021. But in general, you guys are in solid shape as far as what programs you have in place. Again, this is a report that's been approved by the state already. We kind of want to talk you through the timeline and where we are today. The 60-day public comment period is ending tonight as we speak. We received one comment. We have that in an updated report on the website, and that has been addressed as well. The CDCB conditional approval was received June 10th. Tonight, town adoption and acceptance. And then moving forward, we need to get this approved for this summer. So that's another caveat here I failed to mention in the beginning, was that this is an extension that was given to us by the state to be done by this summer and approved by this summer. So here we are, and we're basically on the next 7 years after we get things finalized with the state. And that's a wrap as far as what I have. You guys have any questions for me?
Ken.
Joel, thanks for being here tonight. And I gotta say, it was a great report. It was very illuminating. It took some time to get through, but there was great content in there. I do have some comments and questions, but I think it's mostly for staff. Just first comment, I love reading the sentence of, upon completion of the Windy Gap firming project, the town has a robust water supply portfolio. I appreciate the good planning. I know there's lots of municipalities that probably can't make that statement in their reports. So appreciate the work to get us here. On page 2-7, there's a paragraph about the restriction for watering that goes from April 1st through October 31st, from 10 in the morning to 6 at night. I was a little surprised to read this because I didn't know we actually had that on the books, and I'm a little curious what our enforcement mechanisms are for that, and if we are actually enforcing that ordinance.
Our code enforcement officer uses the soft touch. You know, if we find someone that's watering during the day, we normally go out and talk to them and explain why you don't water during the day. And so that's kind of our enforcement. We seldom take anybody, write them a ticket or whatever. It's more explaining the process and why we want to water at night and not lose it all to evaporation.
Okay, but it is something where at least...
And periodically we put in a newsletter, this is what town's requirements are, but we're not really beating on the door telling everybody don't water during the day, but
of course
the word gets out.
Okay, appreciate that. A little bit further down on page 2.8 where there's discussion of adjustments to the town code that can be made for the residential green building program paragraph. There's a sentence at the end that says adding a requirement to include a certain percentage of water efficient points would be a simple way to ensure additional water efficiency for new construction. Is this something that we are considering implementing soon and adding an update to our town code?
No, I think it's a discussion with the ACES committee and whether this is something we want to implement. We've talked about it in the past, but we haven't, carried forward. We've done more of an education, and we provide the home audits and the discounts for various types of water conserving devices in homes, but we haven't gone out and...
Is there a drawback to us doing something like this? I mean, it's towards the building program, so it would be on my understanding of when construction is actually happening. Is there a concern for why we wouldn't want to implement something of this type?
It's just another, no, I would say no. There's just another opportunity for somebody who's got new construction to meet the green building program.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like low-hanging fruit. If we could capitalize on some of these easy ones, I think that'd be appreciated and go towards one of our board goals of environmental sustainability. And then the bullet underneath it, Also speaks to the town currently drafting a code section of commercial construction that would outline similar green building requirements. And while in draft format, it would be a good opportunity for the town to consider adding water efficiency requirements to the commercial code. That seems to be another piece of low-hanging fruit, unless I'm missing something. But if that's something we could attack, that'd be appreciated as well.
I'm hearing some support then from the board for us to.
You have my support. Not hearing objections. Going down further in the document into the fourth section, there's a discussion of water efficiency activities, and that it's possible for a portion of the annual budget for water conservation to be funded by state grant programs that are currently administered by the CWCB. Do we apply for these grants, and have we received any in the past?
Due to the deadline we were under right now, we weren't able to apply for those. So you have to have this approved before, basically you have the grant in hand before you get this approved, but it is something to look forward to in the future. And yeah, they do provide a 50% match on that.
Yeah.
But it's usually something you got to go through the application before we get into doing the report.
Are these annual grants?
Well, you kind of do them whenever you want. It's quarterly.
Okay.
If you're asking for more than 50K, you have to go to the CWCB, and that takes more like every 6 months. You have to go to their board meetings and present your projects. So for something like this, in another 7 years, it's worth earmarking, if you will, having a match to do those in the future, because they can help pay for half of it.
And what's the success rate typically?
It's pretty solid, especially if you have a plan in place like you already do.
Yeah.
If you were to do another update, it would be pretty straightforward and easy to get, because you're asking for under 50K. When you get over 50K, you go to the board and it gets a little more complicated. And it's a case by case, 30%, 20% probably.
Okay. And then final question, and I missed a few ACES meetings earlier this year. I know this was put out to the community for comment. Did this go to ACES at all for their comment? Seems like something that would be in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, they. I sent it to the Parks and Rec, to Patrick Hammer, because he had requested it for ACES. Now, whether it actually got there, I wasn't sure, but I did send it over to him. So,
okay.
Hopefully they got it.
Matt, do you know if this actually made it to ACES?
But meeting, I'd have to go back and look, yeah.
Okay. I can follow up with the chair as well.
Yeah.
And verify.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Along those lines, I saw in the notes that you'd received one comment when you published this on the website. What was that? What was the nature of that comment, or how was it addressed?
It was how we addressed development and population growth.
Got it. Thank you. I see it now. Thanks, Ken.
I just had, this happens to be a particular area of interest of mine in, well, let me go with the page number rather than the, on page 4.7. You noted that there were 3 very large users of potable water in the town of Superior, and the third largest user was the Summit at Rock Creek Homeowners Association Building Number 19. I don't know all the numbers in the building. Is that the clubhouse?
I'm not sure which one that is.
I actually think it is not.
Is it?
We have a building that has been notoriously a problem for water use, sometimes 8 to 10 times higher than any of the other buildings. And I can just tell you that if you approach the Summit at Rock Creek about trying to figure out what this problem is, they will wholeheartedly participate, because we have not been able to get to the bottom of what, I mean, we've done everything we possibly can and cannot figure out what the problem, at first I thought it might be the clubhouse, which obviously has a pool. But that's still, I mean, literally it is huge, and I can guarantee you the Summit would welcome the opportunity to address the problem
We'll
with
go
this
over there
one
and take a look.
building.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, anything else?
Otherwise, I actually thought it was really interesting.
Okay.
It was long, but it was worth it fighting through.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve Superior Metro District Number 1, Resolution Number SMD Number 1-4, Series 2019, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, approving the adoption of the 2019 Water Conservation Plan.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Director Lish and second by Director Hammerly. All those in favor? Right, passes unanimous. Thank you.
I think there was 2 resolutions.
I'll make another motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-40, Series 2019, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving the adoption of the 2019 Water Conservation Plan.
Second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Lish, second by Trustee Hammerly. All those in favor? Okay, that passes unanimous. Thank you. All right, thanks for the presentation. All right, we're on to item number 5, which is adoption of a resolution reducing the speed limit along South Coal Creek Drive from 35 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe the Transportation Safety Committee has discussed this issue, and Alex and his staff and consultants did a traffic study on this roadway, and we're recommending that the speed limit be reduced along with the TSC from 35 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour. You want to go over your presentation?
I can, quickly just highlight it. So this came from Alex Arenello, Public Works Director. This came from the TSC, concerned about the speed limit and issues along South Coal Creek, north of Rock Creek Parkway. The transportation plan has a discussion about that particular roadway. Originally was planned as a 4-lane collector roadway that was supposed to go through the town center, hook up to McCaslin, and actually hook up to 76th Street. That's why 76th Street and Coal Creek are so wide. We don't, because of the downscaled development plans for Superior, we don't need that type of roadway. In fact, on South Coal Creek Drive, we restriped it a few years ago to make it 2 lanes with wide bike lanes. And we always envisioned some traffic calming on that facility if it ever connected to the town center. With the closure of Waldona back in September, all the bus stops are now at Akron and South Coal Creek Drive. And there was concerns about a lot of students crossing South Coal Creek Drive. TSC looked at that, and we proposed some traffic calming with an island and potentially a rapid flashing beacons. In fact, the islands will be going in this summer. When the board approved the lanterns development, as Coal Creek Drive goes through the lanterns, we decided to neck down Coal Creek Drive, narrow the width, so take it down from 56 feet to 34 feet. There's a trail in that area, so we'd have a raised trail crossing. We'd have a 4-way stop at Lanterns Drive and Coal Creek. So we had a number of traffic calming features built into the north end. And so this has been the start of traffic calming along Coal Creek Drive. We did provide speed data to the Transportation Safety Committee. The 85th percentile speed was about 34 miles an hour. But the TSC felt that let's move to lower the speed limit. Staff concurred, since we do have traffic calming features underway this summer, and then with the construction of the lanterns development. So we're recommending lowering the speed limit from 35 to 25.
Okay, thanks. Questions from the board?
No questions, just I'm super excited about this potential reduction. It was a bit of an oversight originally, and that it was 35 miles an hour in the first place when it was restriped to be 2 lanes And it'll be really interesting to see what kind of data we get if we could do another traffic study. And, you know, you've sort of convinced me that people drive to the design of the roadway and sometimes ignore speed limits. And so it'll be interesting to see if there's material change to the speed limit, as I think there's maybe an appetite to do this on some other roads in Rock Creek. So we can't afford to redesign all the roads, but we could afford some new signs. So thanks for prioritizing this, and excited.
I don't have any questions or comments on this particular proposal, and I want to thank the TSC for considering it, making the recommendation. My question is just about the raised pedestrian crossings, refuges that are planned for Coal Creek. What's the status on that design? And is that something that we're going to be seeing presented to the board in the near future?
Right. I mean, we had, envisioned that traffic calming would take place. In fact, I think there was some money, there was some set-asides in the development agreement for traffic calming on Coal Creek Drive if it connected to the town center. We had envisioned that when that decision is made, that we would come back and come up with a traffic calming plan for Coal Creek Drive. I think TSC is pushing us a little faster than we had envisioned, and so we are doing the one at Akron, the one at Lanterns. We put in by Lanterns. If the board and TSC wants us to move forward with additional measures, we certainly could do that and include that in a budget request, for example, and have that designed and maybe built, next year. So it wasn't in our initial plans, but I think TSC has made this a priority.
How many bus stops are there right now? Is there just one, or are there two along Coal Creek now?
It's a good question. I know there's the one at Akron. I'm not sure if there's one at Riverbend. You guys might know.
I think it's just at Akron, but I think it's multiple buses. I don't think it's just one bus.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess my thinking is just I'd prioritize wherever the students are crossing.
That's at Akron.
Expediting, making it safer.
Sure.
Alex, one more question about that refuge at Akron. The memo says that it will eliminate the left turn lane. That's just eliminating the lane, but still allowing people to make a left-hand turn, right?
Right. The lane will go away. You can still make lefts there, yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. And then I did have a question about the sign location document that was included. And just more out of curiosity, how those specific locations were chosen and whether there's a science behind it.
Well, we wanted to have him both at the beginning, right north of Rock Creek Parkway, and coming south, there was no speed limit sign there. I added the one in the middle just because the pedestrian refuge was there. So I wanted to bracket the school bus stop and the pedestrian crossing at Akron. So that's why those two are put where they were.
Would you have any, and I appreciate the second one that will be up near the future refuge. Would you have any objections or concerns to actually moving that specific one further south to closer to Riverbend, so it's just north of Riverbend? My concern of driving on that road is once you pass Riverbend and you get past that just initial curve, that's when you hit the straightaway and people really pick up speed. So it's right at literally right after Riverbend where I think it might have the most useful high impact.
Sure. I'll look at that. That's a good suggestion.
Okay. Questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Any public comment on this item? Okay. Any further board discussion? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, Town of Superior, resolution number 41, Series 2019, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior reducing the speed limit along South Cold Creek Drive from 35 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour.
Motion by trustee Ryan, second by trustee Skrzynski. All those in favor? All right, that passes unanimous. All right, thank you very much. All right, next up on the agenda is item number 6, adoption of a resolution approving a ditch crossing agreement with South Boulder and Cold Creek Irrigation Ditch Company and the BC Lanterns Rock Creek LLC.
Thank you, Mayor. The South Boulder and Cold Creek Irrigation Ditch Company owns a 50-foot wide tract of land that is the length of Tract H. As part of the development of downtown Superior and the Lanterns development, we need a ditch crossing agreement with the ditch company so that we can have pedestrian and roadway connections across this 50-foot wide tract of land. Town Attorney's Office has been working with the attorney for the ditch company over the last couple months, I think. And they've gotten to a point where there's disagreement about indemnification language included in the agreement. And they refuse to take it out. And the attorney's position for the town is it's not required.
Right. So the provision that we have an issue with is 20C, which requires that the town indemnify and hold harmless the ditch company. Typically what we do when we get agreements that include those provisions is we take them out because there's a couple different laws that that we believe would be violated if the town were to have to indemnify and hold harmless, say, another entity. So my understanding from the discussion is that we've kind of pointed out to them that we're not going to agree to indemnify the ditch company themselves. They've been resistant to taking that out. So that's kind of where we stand as of right now. I know that we've notified them to have somebody come in and answer any type of questions having to do with their kind of pushback on that provision. They indicated that they didn't have anybody available for tonight, but
they did indicate though that they could possibly meet over the next couple of weeks.
Right.
I guess I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Are you aware of what the indemnity provision for Lanterns from a construction standpoint? They obviously have an easement or use. Are you aware of what was negotiated from the construction standpoint between them and the ditch company?
Yeah, I'm not clear on what was negotiated between those two. I mean, other than what's kind of included within the crossing agreement itself.
I think it's my understanding that it is a commercially reasonable term and what's been negotiated from the construction, but what they're proposing to us, it would be commercially unreasonable. In your experience and in Kendra's experience, are you aware of any other ditch company that operated in a similarly commercially unreasonable manner?
It's my understanding that we've dealt with 4 or 5 other ditch companies that have actually agreed to remove that provision or otherwise agreed to a hold harmless provision. And I'm not, as far as I understand from Kendra's experience, I don't think she's had this type of pushback with an indemnification provision like this from another ditch company.
And her discussions have been with outside counsel. Have we talked to any representative of the ditch council, of the ditch company?
You know,
it's just
I'm
pure
not
outside counsel.
Yeah, I'm not sure of what the extent of her conversation. I know that she has been primarily kind of discussing the agreement itself with their outside counsel.
Right. So I think it is important to get a representative of the ditch company on the phone with Matt to say, hey, seems like your lawyer is acting outside the scope of what we consider to be commercially reasonable and potentially even unlawful, and are you aware of what's going on and why are you doing so? So, I mean, I'm happy to discuss it, but I'm not prepared to vote yay or nay on a contract that we've determined is commercially unreasonable and potentially unlawful.
Alex, can you just describe it's a piped The ditch is piped, right?
Right, this is a
Describe it
lateral
with the
that
board.
comes off the FRICO ditch.
Can we pull up a map? Like a Google map, just to show exactly where the ditch travels?
So it's a 24-inch pipe. The ditch has already been put in the pipe, and it goes through this area, and then eventually crosses US 36. It kind of daylights, and then gets into another ditch that goes across US 36, into another pipe that goes through US 36. And as I understand it, the major shareholders are the county and Louisville. So it supplies the county with some water, maybe the Rock Creek open space, Carolyn Holmberg open space, and Louisville also gets water from it. And both the major representatives of those entities on the board, they're willing to talk about it, and they couldn't be here tonight.
So it's this line, right?
Zoom in a little bit more.
Right, it kind of outfalls
So
here.
that's not a FRICO ditch, that's the South Boulder
Right.
Ditch Company. And then where does it go once we're getting into?
There's pipes over here that cross the turnpike.
So it doesn't feed into the Hodge and Harris?
No.
Is there another ditch that feeds that? No? Somewhere else?
As I believe it, it all daylights here and then gets into additional pipes that go across US 36.
Okay.
And not only do we have to work it out here, but we've also need to cross it when we build the bikeway extension. We'll have to cross it again. So we need to figure out how this is going to work, and because.
So for purposes of, I understand whether, if Coal Creek's going to extend and connect to downtown Superior, or if the frontage road promenade is going to connect, we'd need to cross it.
Right.
But for the Lanterns development as is, they don't need to cross it, and they may not necessarily even have an easement. Do they actually have an easement already?
There's utility extensions that'll feed between the two developments that we need as well.
But does Lanterns, Boulder Creek, do they already have a negotiated easement to connect, or are they relying on us as the town to reach this agreement that they're going to basically benefit from? I guess my question is, are we putting anything on hold by pumping the brakes right now and having the ditch company come in 2 weeks or a month or whatever they can get on our calendar?
Yeah, it's, they need the agreement for the water and wastewater connections. And based on this agreement here is what everybody's relying on, is this one agreement.
So this agreement is for the utilities. This is
Well,
not,
and it'll be for roadway
But
and pedestrian as well.
but right now, it's just for the utilities. But the hope is to use the same agreement for these future pedestrian roadway connections. So just, you're negotiating it once, essentially.
Right, they're gonna, what we told Lanterns, they have to connect the utilities. They need to provide eventually, if the board so desires, that the roadway would go. But we want the utilities connected because it's important to loop our utilities to have the connection between downtown Superior and Rock Creek Ranch to provide other ways of getting water.
Right, but Alex, I think the question is, if we take a couple weeks to haul in a board member or the president of the ditch company to say, what's going on here? Is there any downside to doing that?
No, I think if the board feels that, we'll take a chance, that's fine. We had reached an impasse with the attorneys to work this out.
So you can give us a couple weeks, and we're not going to hear, we've had a 2-year delay because the 2 weeks.
No.
It's, week for week.
Boulder Creek's out there with their utility contractor. They'd like to get this resolved. They don't want to wait 6 months, but another month, I don't think would be.
But is it going to be a stop work for Boulder Creek Lanterns if this doesn't get done tonight, waits 2 weeks, waits a month? Are we going to cause, because, that's the sort of thing that really derails developments, right? Is like you have something that they're relying on, and then all of a sudden they're waiting on, government approval, whoever's at fault. And then all of a sudden now the crew that they had mobilized for them is now going to go mobilize somewhere else, and then everything gets slowed down. So I just want to understand, is there any unintended consequence that we're going to be realizing here if we don't take action on this tonight?
I think we can take the 2 weeks. I think we'll need to have some sort of action on the 22nd, though.
So Matt, you mentioned that the primary owners of that water are shareholders in that water were the county and Louisville, and the ditch company president in this agreement has got a Boulder County email. Are we dealing with the county here, or is he just a county employee that happens to be the president of the ditch?
He's a county employee that happens to be on the board of the ditch company.
Okay, but his county affiliation has nothing to do with
the county owns water rights in the ditch.
Okay, but his personal affiliation is just as an individual who's he's not the ditch
from the county. I think he's a member of. He represents the county.
Right. Yes, he represents the county, and we have another shareholder who represents the city. And they're both city employee and county employee.
Okay. I'm just scratching my head, going, why are we? These are our allies on so many things. I just don't know why we're battling with attorneys. When.
That was my question.
So I think that's Kevin's point, right? And so Kendra can't talk to the ditch company, right? She's ethically precluded from, and Dan can't because they're represented by council. So the council needs to talk to each other, and sometimes council isn't effectively talking with council because for whatever reason they can't get a deal done. So you get the decision makers actually, the clients together, and then they can hash out a deal. So it seems to me under the circumstances it's reasonable to just get somebody from the ditch company here to say, hey, what's the deal?
Or maybe one of us gets on the phone. But we'll have a better plan.
Yeah, and if that's not going to derail anything, and all of a sudden destroy the Lanterns development because they can't mobilize anybody, I think 2 weeks is reasonable. Under the circumstances, I think, to me, if this was an open ditch, there's kind of more potential liability of somebody going in there and falling in and hurting themselves as opposed to something that's a buried pipe. I can't imagine that, there's going to be too much there. But with the construction there, somebody can, nick the pipe and cause a big headache that somebody would need to fix. And it seems like we just need to understand.
Yeah, I think our position around hold harm, it's as the difference between the hold harmless and the indemnity of the third party. So I think we have a commercially reasonable stance, and yours is less than that.
And also, right now, that as it's currently drafted, the provision is probably unlawful, right? And we would be adopting something that we would take the position if we ever ended up in litigation that this is unenforceable anyway. So it seems like let's avoid that problem to begin with and reach an agreement that actually works for both parties rather than us signing something under protest saying that we're going to contest the validity of this provision in the event that we need to actually litigate it. So let's take an additional 2 weeks, see if we can get the decision makers talking to each other to reach some deal.
It's my understanding also that we've let them know about the 22nd as well, that they may be, we may ask them to come back on the 22nd to appear before the board.
Okay, do we need a motion to table this, or do we just say?
Yeah, put it to a motion.
Okay.
I'll move to table the adoption of the resolution approving the ditch crossing agreement with South Boulder and Coal Creek Irrigating Ditch Company and BC Lanterns Rock Creek LLC.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis and second by Trustee Ryan. All those in favor? All right, passes unanimous. It's a motion or items tabled. All right, we're on to item number 7, discussion of process and timeline for former Land Rover building.
This item was scheduled to give the board an opportunity to discuss the process and timeframe that you would like to use with regard to the Land Rover building. Whether you wanted to start the process now or wait until we have the sale closed. If you would like to start the public engagement process now, wait. Who you'd like to take the lead on that? Is it committee? Is it the board? Would you like to engage a architect now or wait until the sale, the close on the building? Those type of questions, just so we can get some idea, so my staff can start, working on items if you want to start now in the process. We did have the one architectural company that put together a list of concepts for the building, just so the board could have an idea of what possibly could go there to help you in your decision-making process on whether you wanted to move forward with it, which I thought was some great ideas for the building. But it'd be helpful for us to know how you'd like to either begin this process or wait, and what that process looks like and time frame.
To help drive the conversation, can you give us an update on what has taken place from when we went under contract to now, and whether there's results from inspections or anything else?
So we've had inspections done for the building and for environmental. We're waiting to get those reports back. As soon as we get those back, we'll provide those to the board so you can see those. We had a title commitment that's done. We paid the earnest money for the agreement, so that's been done. So now we're in the inspection period. We're hoping to get those back, I think this month, at the end of this month, maybe earlier. So as soon as we get those, we can provide those to you. The initial report from the building inspector, just their initial thought on it was nothing too serious jumped out at them, so that was good information. But we're waiting to get those reports back.
And remind us, when's our drop dead date? Let's just.
Martin, do you remember? Second week of August.
Okay. So
That's our due diligence period.
Okay. So we'll just have to,
And then I'm sorry.
We just got to be careful there, because if we're meeting on, let's look at a calendar here, right? If we definitely want to make sure that we as a board are seeing,
At the 29th.
well,
Or 26th.
our next meeting is, so realistically, we won't see it on the 22nd, right? So our August board meeting is August 12th. And so if August 12th, we're presented with a leaking underground storage tank, and we wanted to make some decisions, that would be unfortunate if the drop dead date was August 10th, right? So we just got to manage some dates,
Right,
which I'm sure
and we
you're
may
doing.
have to have a special meeting in between there.
Okay, so let's just be careful and get those calendared. Okay, from my perspective, I think, there's opportunities are endless for this building. I'm obviously super excited. But I could bucket this, and so your question around, there's a lot of questions in there to unpack, but no, that's all right, around architect. There's engagement of the community, which we should talk about, and then there's the architect. And while the opportunities are endless, I could bucket them, I think, into 3 big categories. There's a big category of, we own the building, and now we have the option to choose who is the future tenant, and it would be a commercial tenant, just as the former owners of the building were making that determination. Category 1, we lease it to them. They're, in theory, responsible for the tenant improvement. Category 2 would be, we are making the tenant improvements and making that determination for what we want to put in there, whether or not it's some type of, annex, art depot, whatever, but we are driving that. And then I think there's an opportunity 3 that's sort of a hybrid, called the private-public partnership approach. I have no idea which bucket, and then there's probably lots of different things, but those are in my brain, the three big categories. I have no idea which category we're going with. And so, from my view, it would be premature to spend a lot of money on architects. But I'd love to spend a little bit of money on architects, or have architects that want the business to tell us what they could do, which is, I think what that firm, just for the record, what's the name of the firm? I put you on the spot.
They're the firm that did the Louisville expansion, recreation.
Oh, it was the same folks.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool.
Perkins will?
Say again, please.
Perkins will?
Yep.
Thank you. If others, Oz or anybody else, wanted to put forth their ideas, and they're not architectural diagrams, they're, they give it to some associate for a few hours, and they're sort of moving around the Lego boxes and saying, this would be cool, that would be cool. I'd be interested in that, but from my perspective, I want to focus on how we engage the community to listen around what good ideas they have. And I think Laura made a really good point earlier around, sometimes people feed off each other. And I want to find a way to do that. And it would be a little premature to go too far down the architect path. So, but it was helpful to have the poster-sized things at that listening session that I had, where I could lay it out and say, this is what the building looks like. And this is one person's idea. And somebody's, and then they could react. That's a terrible idea. Or it's helpful to see the space. And what if we did this and that? So I think having something, but not go too far down the path when we start engaging the folks. So I feel like I rambled on for a little bit. Too early for me to hire the architect with any amount of detail, but having some framework that we could put in front of the community, and then hopefully talking tonight about what that process will look like, both from a process and maybe timeline. So I think would be important.
So to build on what Kevin said around engaging the community, I'm certainly a fan of social media. I think this is a great opportunity for the town to maybe put something out on our town Facebook page, similar channels like that, where it's not just a survey where you just respond and say, here's what I want, and it goes into a black box. But I really want to see some of that dialogue come together, where it's one person saying, I want a police station, and other people saying, no, I don't like that idea, or I'd rather see a Trader Joe's, or whatever. But I think, to Kevin's point at the beginning of what he was saying, I think it'd be really interesting to specifically ask the community, what type of establishment would you like to see there? Would you like it to be a restaurant or a community center or a municipal building? And that's question one. And question two is, what should the ownership of that be? To me, they can be tied together depending on what the intended use is, but I'd really be interested in hearing from the community on both of those topics. So, social media would be a great place to start. It's very inexpensive. It's atemporal. We can all look at it. That's great. I would love to see also some in-person sessions as well. I'm sure it'll be a big topic at First Friday this week. And if it's not, I will certainly bring it up, as I want to hear from people. I think Kevin and Sandy both did a great job hosting the session last week. But anything more like that we can spin up, I think would be really great. And I'd rather see our attention on hearing from the community than from architects.
Ken?
I think I'll concur with basically everything that's been said. I just want enough so we can show something to the community and let them build off each other. I think the only other thing that I'd add to Laura's, and yes, we want people in there to see it, let's schedule some tours. Let's offer 2-3 actual tour times that people can sign up for and go in and see the building. Just let them see what we saw. From a timing perspective.
Can we do that?
Well, not until we close.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to do that.
Okay.
And that brings me to my next point. I don't want to start this community stuff until we close. The last thing I want to do is continue to build expectations, continue to get this up to a fever pitch, and then at the last second, we have something that we find in an inspection report that makes us fall through. And all of a sudden, we've let the community down. I want to avoid that at all costs. If we have to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks to actually start this engagement, there's no harm in that, in my opinion. So I'd rather wait until we close and then get the ball rolling on this and really get moving. But let's just make sure we do it in the proper order.
Okay to have a dialogue, or are we going around?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, is it possible for us to put the the information that Kevin presented at the at the listening session out somewhere for people to be able to look at and react. I mean, maybe we don't want to do that, but it certainly generated some conversation, because we're really the only people who've seen that, except for the folks
Was
who
it the
were at
slide?
the listening session.
What
So-
was it? The slides?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was
I
the
sent the
diagram that
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
sent to
just-
the
it's-
board, and I
right.
just thought maybe if we could, it gives some conversation point if we're gonna go out and do it. I don't know exactly what the timing is. It feels to me like it's wrong to put something out publicly until it closes.
Well, I want to be a little careful. So I agree, we got to be a little careful, but we've all, I think we're all homeowners, right? And so when you made an offer on that house, you started dreaming. You started
Yeah,
dreaming
exactly.
about,
Yeah.
you know, which kids were going in what room and what you were going to do with the kitchen and what color paint you wanted to put on the wall. We're allowed to do that. That's not, you know, I mean, I don't want to go too far and get the community excited. I'm not suggesting we promise, you know, a library annex or a police station or anything else, but getting out there and sharing what we know, because we know things now, and it's okay for us to share what we know, which is what the inside of the building looks like. We can't let you in, but I've got a drawing. I could show you the drawing. If you've got a humdinger of an idea, let's talk about it and let's feed off each other. But of course, we can't let anybody into the building. But I do love the idea of having, assuming it's a safe building, right? But I love the idea of having some type of pop-up event, and let's bring a food truck or an ice cream truck or something, and have the community come and listen to us, and either take the, maybe they can't go into the back because there's still hydraulic lifts and stuff, and we got to be a little careful with that. But certainly the front room is clean enough and open enough where we could have members of the community. So,
and I think we might be saying two different things.
Right.
The first comment was, ooh, you're under contract, start dreaming, that sort of thing, and let's share information. I'm fine sharing information. Let's put this out there, but I don't want to start having these meetings until we've closed. I mean, to your point of, have any of your homes ever fallen through from inspection?
Sure.
Yeah, I've had 3 of them fall through, and every time that is just such disappointment with not just me, my wife, I mean the family. We already know this is a charged issue based off all the Facebook conversations. I'd rather us not poke the bear and get even more charged up and ramped up just for things to fall through.
yeah, hiring a consultant or an architect and spending tens of thousands of dollars would be a mistake. But taking what we have and saying, here's the sketch of what the building, it's 15,500 square feet. Here's a sketch, and the building's basically in thirds. And did you know it has 2 mezzanines? And the mezzanines are rated as follows. And, here's what the questions around what the boundary lines were. What's the line between Starbucks and the Land Rover dealership? Just fundamental, the blocking and tackling, not hiring the architect.
I'm fine with that. I just don't want to actually go out and say, all right, now all of you, now you start dreaming, you tell me, and let's start building an idea. I don't want to do that until we close, and maybe that is something we want to do. But I guess I'm not understanding the rush to get that started and get that done. Sharing all that info you just listed, great. I have no problems with that.
Can I ask a question about this engagement process? Generally I agree that it's good to engage with the community and build off of the indoor survey that we did back in 2014. That was obviously an opportunity to take the pulse about what the community wanted. And, we've already been gathering data points from your meetings, so thank you for doing that, both of you, and having, social media discussions. We can do engagement as little or as much as we want. And I don't know what the right answer is. It's got to be like Goldilocks. It's just got to feel just right. But the question is, what do we do afterwards, right? And we're going to hear a lot of good ideas. We're going to hear a lot of strong opinions. We're going to hear some people who say, like, it's got to be a library. And some people are going to say it's got to be a co-working space. And what I really want is artist studios. And all of these ideas are going to be really, they'll have merit. right? And ultimately, it's going to come down to us to engage the right architect, which is going to be absolutely critical, and then implement a vision that will be successful. So I guess my question is kind of twofold. Well, first, so what do we do with are we just spitballing ideas and getting ideas for things that we may be overlooking, and things that we want to just kind of take the pulse of the community and see what people really want, and how do we actually go about measuring that in a way that is as useful as it can be, right? If we just informally have these listening sessions, it's just kind of anecdotal evidence. We won't necessarily have, okay, we took a survey here and we've got 90% of respondents say do not do X, and 85% of survey respondents say absolutely do Y. So that's kind of, I want to make sure that if we're going down this road of engaging with the community, that we're doing it not necessarily just to listen, but that we have things that we can take from it and then use to implement. And then I think my second point is, if we're just engaging, I think Ken has a good point that we should do this after we close, because we don't want to make false promises to the community or anything like that. But if we're going down this road of listening, there's listening for the sake of listening and just having like an open dialogue with the community, and then there's kind of guided listening, right, where we're actually making suggestions ourselves about what we want, and we want to see what the community actually thinks about those suggestions, because I think part of our job as leaders here on the board is to lead, and to that end, I think what is really imperative is for us to not try to just reinvent the wheel here, and we need to take a census of other buildings and spaces that we're going to look towards for inspiration, right? Like the Stanley Marketplace down in Lowry, and Rayback Collective, and the Source in Denver, and Union Station, and just kind of identify these buildings that are already really active and energized, community spaces that people want to go, and figure out, what do they have in them? And we could tick off a list of some of those places that we all know, but part of it is, I think that the architect's job is, what do you guys think of, what could we do with this? Could it be turned into something like the Rayback? Could it be turned into something like, the Stanley Marketplace? Or are there some things that, and maybe it's not big enough for certain things that are working in those types of spaces. But I think it would be really helpful for us to talk to some architects who have worked on those projects, who have kind of identified those projects, to serve as a source of inspiration. So then when we go to the community and we say, listen, we've been talking to these architects who've done these successful projects, and these are kind of the things that we're looking towards for inspiration. So we're not just thinking, with just a blank slate, like this is what we're thinking about doing. We're actually looking towards these other successful community amenities that already exist as inspiration. And that to me is kind of the way we should be going. I think, like, first and foremost, we should be looking at understanding, what's out there for inspiration, who are the architects behind those buildings, and then, take that information, contact those architects, invite them over to the space, see if they would be interested in working with us. Maybe doing the mock-up. I like your idea about, not spending a lot of money, but, if they want to fight for the work, give us a quick concept plan, and then go to the community and say, these are, take the pulse of the community, but say, these are the sorts of things that we're thinking about.
So I like that idea, but I think it's really presupposing that we are definitely using this for community space. And it's my understanding we haven't definitely decided that yet. All that we've decided as a board thus far is to purchase the building so that we can control what it becomes. But to Kevin's point, I think it could be something that we refinish, sell to somebody else that is doing what we think is a better use for the space. It could be a public-private partnership. I don't know. I really like the idea of looking at these other visionary buildings, but I think in order to do that, we have to know at least
what type of other buildings we want to look at. Meaning community space versus, do we want to sell it to, I'm going to make this up, but do we want to sell it to a car dealership that will not have used cars, for example? I don't think we want that, but point being, I don't think we've discussed that yet. And I think one of the things we said to the community is we did this behind closed doors to settle litigation. Now that we are with the closing of this, we would potentially be out of litigation. I would really like to engage the community sooner rather than later. I think our citizens are really smart. I think if we tell them this is not closed yet, it's not a done deal, they will understand. I mean, there's that element of risk to it. So I think I would really like to see us go forward with public engagement well before the closing. Now that we can say, hey, dream with us. This dream might not come true, but let's start the dreaming now. And to me, that's a lot more transparent than saying, sit tight, we're still gonna keep our mouths shut until the close happens, if the close happens.
Well, help me understand, why start it now? Where's the benefit? And just to be clear, I'm not saying let's keep our mouth shut. I'm happy to provide tons of information. I just don't want to get dreaming sessions going until we close.
So my concern is if we're all doing one-off unofficial forums for this, that doesn't set a good precedent. I think we should have a united approach where we're saying, here's an official town channel to provide your feedback that all of us on the board will look at or hear or whatever else. With regard to kind of why do this now? What if feedback comes back from the community that everyone unanimously agrees, obviously I'm making this an extreme example, that they all want a pool in this space. The inspection comes back and says, hey, it's a great building, but it cannot have a pool. To me, that's valuable information that I would want to use to decide what to do with the inspection. Now, obviously, that's an extreme example, and I by no means think we'll get even 50% agreement on anything, but I think getting at least a flavor for what the community wants will help me better understand when the inspection comes back, is this a good purchase and is this good use of our funds?
And Ken, from my perspective, a lot of it is timing, right? I mean, so we're going to own the building, right? Assuming the inspections come through. I'd like to activate that building. You know, we talk about this a lot. We don't want things in the community that are not activated, whether or not it's open space or parkland, or let's use the resources that we have. We're about to have this resource, and so I'm excited to try to figure out a way to use it. I don't want to rush anything, but I want to try to figure out a way to use it. If we just literally do nothing until the second week in August, then, you know, I got 4 or 5 weeks that may make a big difference. You know, maybe I'm nuts, but I like to think that this building, just for those watching at home, this building is going to require some tenant improvement. We can't move, we're not going to move library books or anything else in. You know, there's hydraulic lifts, there's work that needs to be done, and it's going to take time. I like to think that, in my view, and maybe I'm being overly ambitious, I'd like to see this building activated in 2020, maybe even by the summer of 2020. That to me would be fantastic. If we lose 5 or 6 weeks between now and August, and somebody's got a great idea, and we can't necessarily, you know, talk to the folks that are from the Stanley or the architects that are, you know, Union Station's a really good idea, right? I mean, and I hadn't thought about that, right? But that's the type of thing that we want to talk to, you know, so, you know, we don't, so I just think that whether or not it's I do want to start the official, even if it's putting something informal, you know, on, you know, it's a link on the main Superior webpage that says, this is what we got, you know, and it's just a message board type functionality. Start, you know, feel free to tell us what your idea is. And it doesn't, you know, it's not necessarily a formal process, but because if we go a survey science route, it's not anecdotal, we're going to have to hire a survey company and design that. And the question can't just be, what do you want? Because we all want a library. We all want a something that is a true amenity, but then the next question is, are you willing to pay for it? And that's what I don't know. I don't know what the community's appetite is for paying for a 100% community-focused amenity, right? So I want to be able to have that question to say, do you think it should be 100% community-focused amenity? Or do you think this is a multi-use type thing that includes some commercial tax-paying entity as well as supplemented with a community entity? And I think the quicker we start having those just highest level conversations, the better.
I also think it's important in our initial press release, which was 3 weeks ago on the 17th, we said the board is exploring next steps for the property, so look for more information to be posted over the coming weeks. And we ended it and said, hired a firm to conduct inspections, expect to take 30 to 45 days. The town will also be exploring opportunities for uses for the building during this time. I mean, I think we told the community we're going to engage with them. If we don't do that 2 months after we sent out this press release, I think that's misleading and.
Well, and it's not misleading because we've all already engaged. So we have already done what we've said we're going to do, and yes, we can do more.
I don't think we've had any official, what should we do with this property?
You're right.
And
It's all been
I can say
unofficial.
that I personally have been very careful not to do that.
Yeah,
I would like us to all do this together so that we all get the same information.
I fully agree. I don't think doing a piecemeal is effective. I hear what you guys are saying, and I think where I can meet you in the middle is once we get the reports back on the inspection. That's when we'll be substantially over the line, and we'll know whether we're likely going to get to blows. If we hear back that, yeah, we're good, we don't have anything that's going to be a showstopper, great, let's get moving.
How do we know if it's a showstopper when we really haven't discussed potential uses, though?
Your uses can't be a reason to get out of the inspection.
Understood that.
Or get out of the contract. What's found in the inspection can be that answer.
Right.
So if there's something that says this is a building that is not structurally safe, or there's environmental impacts from the tanks that are underground, those are reasons to get out. The community telling us we want reason X, reason Y are not reasons to get out of a.
But they color what the building. They color the inspection, the results of the inspection report.
I guess for me, yes, I would like to see us start this discussion as soon as we agree that it's reasonably appropriate. I don't think that the residents of this town are as much concerned that we haven't talked to them in the last 2 weeks about this as they are that we make a decision without talking to them. We are not making any decisions at this point. So if we don't do it for another, I would like to see us engage, at least on an informal basis, as soon as we can. But I don't think the town's going to get mad at us as long as we don't go out and make a bunch of decisions without engaging them. So I don't know that the timing is as critical. Now, on the other hand, I am a little concerned, and I think you were just speaking hypothetically, but I am concerned when we start saying that, well, we may be considering turning this into a car dealership. It just can't be a used car dealership. We are arguing this because we committed to the town that this would be a community activity center. Right. And a car dealership is not what we have considered. So that's the only piece that if we're going to have a discussion over something other than a community-based activity, then I think we've got to really be public about the discussion. But I don't think we started that, and I think you were talking hypothetically.
That was absolutely hypothetical, but I do want to clarify that we've said it should be a community activity center as far as the zoning goes, but especially for the public that's watching, that's very different than a community center that is like a YMCA. A community activity center could be a restaurant, and that's something that we...
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we were moving into the regional activity.
Yeah, and sorry for the outlandish example, but again, I want to hear from the public about, do they want to see a true community center library type thing? Do they want us to sell it to a restaurateur who's going to put something in of that nature? I would love to engage in those conversations because, Ken, to your point, I think that will shape how the inspection comes back. That shapes the questions that Kevin pointed out around, do we want to refinish it and sell it? Do we want to refinish it and keep it? Do we want to not do any refinishing? I mean, to me, that's an initial question.
So I'm in general agreement with the idea of not spending significant money on architects until we close. I'm generally okay with the idea of some limited engagement, keeping people up to date on what is transpiring at this time that we can disclose. I think that's reasonable, and get the information that we have out there. The one piece of this that I'd like to inject is that in 2015, we had a board that voted unanimously to spend $250,000 on town hall expansion. I don't think we spent all of that money, but we spent a lot of that money. And then the whole thing fell apart, and those plans are sitting on the shelf in there. And, you know, staff has made do with the space needs at that time. But here we are in 2019, and we've done nothing essentially to address staff needs. And we continually we've hired more staff. We continually call on staff to do more and more and more and do it better, but yet I don't think we're doing anything to address space needs for staff, other than say, just figure it out. And I think with this opportunity, we could potentially address some of those needs. My personal preference would be to go back to the 2015 plan, expand town hall, and put everybody under one roof. I don't know if that'll ever happen, at least in my term or not, but that's my personal preference. But I think we are, in this engagement, I'd like to also engage staff to be sure to tell us what space needs exist. And we've got a Chamber of Commerce that's doing great things too, and they are operating out of a broom closet. And if you've not been over there, you should, because it's not a space to work out of. They share a bungalow with the building department, who also is completely out of space over there. So, we expect all these things to happen, but we just, I don't think there's the focus. So I'm speaking tonight to try to direct some focus onto badly needed staff space that we needed in 2015, and we still need in 2019, and our chamber needs space as well. So I don't know that this particular space is the space for the chamber. I'm not advocating for that. I'm not here to advocate for anything in any place, but I just want that to be part of this discussion as we move forward.
So I think that's fair. I think there's some high-level ideas that are sketched out, and this is a building that may have some mixed-use capability to it, whether or not a shared office space or some level of office space there. I will tell you that, from my perspective, when I was sitting on the other side, I advocated against any discussions of the town hall expansion until we got to the other side of bringing a community of amenity. So yes, I agree that town staff needs space to work in, and this community is a bit without an identity. And I feel strongly about bringing an amenity to the community, and let's focus on the taxpayer. And there is space to rent in this town. Unfortunately, it's fortunate for us that we have it, but unfortunately for the taxpayer perspective, we have commercial vacancy that's available to rent. And so I know it's clunky that that Matt's staff isn't all under one roof. I think we should have that as part of the conversation, but it's a good example. I mean, I didn't expect you to say that. I respect your comments, and I think that's part of the engagement process that we need to go through. And it's not just engaging members of the community, it's engaging staff, it's engaging each other. And I'm not exactly sure how to do that. I think what we're aligned on is let's dream now. you know, I mean, I want people to stop me in the grocery store. I probably had 30 conversations at the 4th of July parade with different people about what this could be, and trying not to have my own thoughts, trying to listen more than speak, which is hard for me. And I think we should all do the same. I love the idea of getting some framework document that we could put on a board and say, you know, this is what the interior looks like. You know, this is, you know, it's 15, it's, you know, again, it's got 2 mezzanines, it's got garage bays, it's got, you know, a very nice finished front spot that's, I don't know how many square feet it is. It's probably 8,000 square feet, and it's 2 stories high, you know, or, you know, it's 35 feet or whatever it is. I think putting that type of information out there is important. But, you know, let's maybe not go too far. But I do, you know, Matt, I would be curious to get your recommendation on, not tonight, but, you know, noodling with Patrick and staff and Alex and others, what, and I think Dina would have a good voice here as well. What is your idea for how we can engage the community? Are we going the science route of a formal survey? Do we have 4 facilitated listening sessions with a professional facilitator where we take information, but it's more anecdotal? I think Mark's point is really good. You can get anecdotal information and then do what we choose to do, or you can get, you know, survey science-based information to say, you know, at a 95% confidence level, you know, 65% of the population demands for a 100% community center, and they're willing to pay, you know, $300 a month for it, or $300 a year, or whatever, through.
I think it's both, and you mix them together.
Okay.
You do the survey and you do the anecdotal, and then that's how you get the well-rounded picture.
Matt, do we still have access to the, what was it called, Engage Superior device that we used years ago?
No, I think we stopped using that.
Okay, so I didn't know if that was because that was sort of an interesting tool, because you had sort of an overarching, you know, topic, but then you could go out and you know, part of it could be what ideas you had, and then another question might be like what Mark said was, give us a building that you know of that you think is cool, that might, or an example of something like that. And I don't know if that tool, like, it's not really an informal, it's not a formal survey. It's social media, but it's not Facebook, because everybody in the world isn't on Facebook, and everybody, but if it was a town-owned, Engage Superior, and I think Louisville has.
Yeah,
no?
Louisville does Engage Louisville. We don't have access to that anymore?
I don't think so.
It's super cheap, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was
We were using it, but we were,
I just wonder if there's a tool like that out there we could use,
But we
because
could always-
it was cool because you could have a new question, so that if somebody said, hey, give us your list of cool buildings that, you know, are 15,000 square feet, that might be your vision of what you would like it to be. And I like it because it would be based on our website, or in a tool that is not, you know, it's not Reddit, and it's not Facebook. It's something that we would own, that we might be able to use.
Yeah, but I mean, we have like the Google group that we tried. I mean, we have Reddit. I mean, you could use either of those platforms for that purpose.
But this one is
but we don't have,
owned by our
you don't-
site.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't think the point is owning it. It's getting people to use it, and you know, that's the trick, right? Is like getting people actually to like know about it and to pay attention to it and to actually like participate in it. And ultimately, like, I don't think we're going to solve that problem right now in a timely enough manner to be relevant for this purpose. I think like when we send out an e-blast and we post that we're going to have a community meeting, people show up, you know, for things that are of concern to the public. When we have, you know, a board member, a meeting, a special meeting that says like, okay, when we were doing this, you know, quarterly community engagement meetings, people at Superior Elementary, when we did that a couple years ago, people showed up to those things. So I think we will have that. I guess I don't want to spend too much money on surveys and science and all that, because I think we've done that before. I think we already know what a lot of the answers are going to be. And ultimately, I think those answers aren't going to be as conclusive as we're going to want them to be. I think it's going to come down to things that we already sort of know, I don't think there's going to be many surprises in terms of what we're going to hear. We're going to hear people want library space. We're going to want, teen space with game rooms. We're going to hear stuff. We want co-working space and study rooms and, art studios and things like that. Senior space. A lot of the things that were already included in the architect's, conceptual plans that Matt circulated. So what I don't want us, to your point, Kevin, like if we can get this thing up and running by next summer, that'll be fantastic. But I could easily see us getting bogged down in engaging with the community and then just, paralysis by analysis, and we're not actually moving the ball forward. So I think what we need to do really is identify a schedule that works. And, whether we're starting the engagement before we close or after, I don't think that that's necessarily as consequential as by October 15th, we're done. And we're making a decision on selecting an architect. And by November 15th, we've got the architect that has plans submitted to us, and we're ironing out the details. And by January 15th, we're giving them the green light. We're approving what we've already budgeted for, so they can get, contractors lined up to start doing the work that needs to be done. I mean, I think that that's what we need to actually identify, because otherwise, before we even know it, it's going to be January, and we're going to be continuing to just have discussions about potential uses without any, framework for progress.
Right. So I agree with everything you said, Mark. We just got to be a little cautious there, because if we have to decide what that future use is before the architect is hired, right? Because we don't want to have the architect design something, and then if there is a financial, the elephant in the room is if there's an increase to the taxpayers, we can't go forward without bringing something to the taxpayers, without bringing that decision to the taxpayers. And that's where things might get a little bit clunky. So we have to that's why I started this with, I think about this in tranches. If this is pure community, it's going to be hard to present something purely for the community with no commercial entity and not ask the taxpayers to pay for it. So that's, to me, that's why I'm sort of, we have to have some, and maybe it's a board conversation with that anecdotal input, but I'm still, in my view, I'm still open to those three areas. Again, it's pure community space. It's pure, we open it up to, the fictitious Trader Joe's. We call Trader Joe's and say, hey, we got a new space, and they come in and say, oh, great, I'll take it, right? That won't happen, but you never know. Versus the public-private partnership where we go to the proverbial Trader Joe's and say, hey, the commercial rate would be $16.50 a square foot, but we really want a Trader Joe's with a community center in the back, so, we'll give it to you for $12 a square foot if you build us, a 6,000 square foot community center. Who knows? I don't know the answer to that, so I don't know how that.
So Kevin, you said, voter or taxpayer approval for stuff. That means that's November 2020. So are we going to put this on hold till November 2020, and then if it goes down, where are we then? So I don't think voter approval on this is even an option. It's not an option. We've already gotten ourselves into this.
So I agree. So Clint,
it's not an option.
So you and I agree on that, right? But because I want to listen to the community, but because I know what we want and what we're willing to pay for might be different things, I believe that this building is some type of, I'll just label it at the highest level, mixed use, which has some commercial entity that is driving revenue for this town, and it has some amenity that is driving some value for that town. So the commercial entity, and I don't know what it is, but that commercial entity blends well with the amenity that is also part of that town, because if it was pure amenity, I don't know how to do that. And you're right, since we've already gotten us into, I wouldn't label it as a mess, I'd label it as an opportunity. We're, the train is left. Yes. I'm excited about it. And so I want to move forward with it, but that's, Mark was making a point around hiring architects, and
I just wanted to clarify that if we start talking about voter approval for stuff, that's not an option. And I think we need to take that dialogue out of the mix, because if we start setting expectations in the community, though, we're gonna vote on something. No, we're not. Or no, they're not.
Well, then we just need to have be pragmatic about somebody that thinks that we're gonna get a 15,500 square foot library, and we're gonna invest a couple $1 million in a 15,500 square foot library and bring equivalent library services that Louisville may have. That is just something that we, as a relatively small community, cannot do. So we just need to make sure that we could not, without, I'll be frank, going to the voters, but you can't, these are two things that can't exist together, right? So when somebody says, oh, I want the whole thing to be a library, I want the whole thing to be a beautiful community center or an art showcase, we're just going to have to set some reasonable expectations saying, me too, but we have to bring some commercial usage in there, because we can't, this great town of 4 square miles can't take we can't build a Olympic-sized swimming pool there for $15 million. It's just not possible.
But we're gonna have to. I think I agree with what Clinton's saying, but I think to Kevin's point, there's a line, right? And we can't appropriate new dollars without going to the voters, and we can't borrow, we can't bond, because it's the same thing, without going to the voters. So we can reallocate what has already been appropriated and what has already been bonded for, however we see fit. And we have certain opportunities within the general fund, and I think it would be helpful to know from Matt, from Paul, where is that kind of threshold of, do we have $2 million to play with before, like, all of a sudden we're not repaving, Rock Creek Parkway in the next 10 years? Do we have $3 million to play with? Do we have $4 million? Like, at some threshold, we would need to go to the voters and say, like, no, there's no way that we could actually pull something off like this. And also, like, there's a threshold where we wouldn't want to pull it off because, it wouldn't make sense for the community to spend $20 million putting in a infinity pool there, right? Even though it would be cool, it wouldn't necessarily make sense. So I think it would be helpful for us to know kind of what our budget is going to look like in terms of doing the improvements, assuming we're doing it all on our own without a third party that's working with us.
I think we can make that assumption for now, and if we get the third party, then that's great.
Then that changes things,
I like
right?
that.
But once we have that information, that would then inform the process of working with an architect, because obviously they're not going to design plans for us that if we have a $2 million budget and there's going to come in at $7 million to do the beautiful plans, they're obviously not going to get the work. So we just need to be mindful of, what we're working with realistically in a plan A, which is us doing it on our own, and a plan B if we were to partner with somebody else.
We have a lone member of the public here. Would you like to make any public comment on this item? Just offering that opportunity.
Enjoying the show, guys.
Okay. That's a good show. Just wanted to make sure you could participate if you wanted to. Okay. All right, back to the show.
So I think we've agreed on three.
Needs to be closer to the mic. They can't hear you.
Sorry. I think we've agreed on three things. I'll try. Number one, invite the dreamers to dream, but don't go too far, right? Let's, Matt, if you could make some recommendations on how we might get input, whether or not we could reactivate Engage Superior, whether or not you put some link out there that allows people to feed off that, whatever. I'm sure you guys are the experts. Number two, I think we invite architects to tour the space, and if they want to give us some ideas, I think that's a good idea. I think to your discretion, you know, we've been thinking about, you know, some kitchen designers will come and give you your ideas for free, and some of them you have to pay a couple $100. I think we'll use your discretion on whether or not how to manage that. I think you're really, really good at that. And then I forget what the third thing we agreed upon was.
Setting a final timeline?
No, yeah, right. And I think establishing some type of high-level timeline, or maybe with Matt's recommendation, how we have a more formal, you know, if it's a kind of a soft engagement process, you know, what are Matt's staff's
we can come up with
recommendation
something
for
you
a
to look at.
more formal engagement process that has the timeline? You know, I think we all, you know, 12 months would be great. You know, if the space is activated next summer, which is maybe insane, you know, what would need to happen between now and then to get that space activated? Just
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say that, I mean, we'll put together some recommendations for you to look at as far as process and timelines and target dates. This is a good reminder, I think, for the board, the difficult decision that you're going to have ahead of you on trying to figure out what to do with this space, because you are going to hear from, like has been said, all sorts of different people with all great ideas, and it's going to ultimately come back to the 7 of you to try to come to a single decision, which is not going to be easy. So we'll try to help you out as much as we can from a staff level, and get you as much information with examples of other buildings, stuff like that.
Are we going to
Engage
get
architects.
Adam engaged at all in this?
Yes,
Our economic development
yeah,
person? Okay, I just wanted to make sure we didn't leave him out of this process.
Well, and Mitchell, for that matter, too. I mean,
I know.
I mean, it's.
From an economic development standpoint.
So,
definitely.
Kevin, to your first point of what we all agreed on, invite the dreamers to dream, but don't go too far. I do want to talk about that one a little bit more, because I think I heard some disagreement on what that means. I know prior to, trying to be careful how I say this, I know we had some previous discussions saying, let's make sure to not talk about what we'd like the space to be. Are we now saying we're okay to start doing that? To start sharing our ideas with people, to host sessions to discuss things like along those lines? Because I was being very careful after that session to not even indicate what I thought the space might be, but it sounds like now as a board we're okay doing so.
I think from my view, I think there are two different things. I think we have to be, I think the guidance we got from council is let's be careful to go on a, you know, what's happened has happened, and now we're on a go forward basis, and we can't, we should not, things that were discussed in executive session, things that were discussed through all that they're in the past, and they are what they are. Now, in terms of how we engage in the future, I think it's not a legal thing, it's a.
Correct, but as a board.
It's just from a best practice, from my perspective, it's out, right? Cat's out of the bag. I like mixed use stuff. It's a big building. It's cool. It's right in the middle.
Okay.
Mixed use. I like mixed use.
So I just
But
want to
also
check,
wanna
because
listen.
in our last
Right.
meeting, we were saying, let's not talk about those specifics. So I was being extremely careful and tight-lipped not to say anything. I just want to double check that we're all in agreement. We're okay to express our opinions on it now.
So if I recall it correctly, we were not to talk about the negotiations related to the purchase contract, okay? Because that's calling for
Agreed.
attorney-client privileged communications with counsel. And then we were also talking about a specific proposed use that is now no longer on the table.
Correct.
So the caution about that potential proposed use is immaterial at this point, because there's no potential deal to blow up. Now everything, I mean, the world's your oyster. Go talk about proposed uses till
Perfect. Okay.
your heart's delight.
Just wanted to make sure I understood that. I didn't
talk
know.
about anything. I mean,
Great.
At this point, we're talking to the community, and people are making suggestions, and we should take those suggestions and make our own suggestions and talk to architects and talk to everybody.
Right.
And figure out what the best use is. So
Right.
I wouldn't
Okay.
hold back on any of
And
it.
I'd say we're open for unsolicited proposals. If there's an entrepreneur out there who's watching this right now and they say, man, I would love to turn that building into, you know, the place where I'm going to build my next carbon fiber bike and, you know, perfect. I think we are open. It was Mark's fault. It was Mark's fault. I think we're open to receiving unsolicited proposals and ideas. Again, let's let the dreamers dream.
Okay, so then with regard to the plan for engagement, as much as I would like to see that start as soon as possible, I don't think we all agreed that we should start formal agreement until the deal closes. Are we comfortable with individual board members soliciting feedback from the community before that time?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we covered that as a board, so great.
One thing I wanted to get clarification on, we've asked Matt to start to pull together a timeline, process, that sort of thing. We can either leave that to Matt to say, if you want to hit X date, we have to do this type of community engagement, or we can have a conversation right now about the type of community engagement we want. We've talked about a scientific type survey that's clearly going to take longer. It has more moving pieces. It's going to push us further down the road. It's going to push our timeline out. Or we can do much more of the facilitated conversations. We can do many more of the unofficial type things, gather as much as we can without going that route, and it'll shorten our timeline. Are we ready to give Matt direction one or the other now? Do we want to have that discussion now, or do we want to see what Matt comes back with to push that conversation in our next meeting?
I'd love to take everybody's pulse, and I love what Mark said, sort of a less scientific engagement with formal surveys and anecdotal listening sessions, maybe some facilitation, but, you know, let's get those good ideas. So I throw my weight behind what Mark suggested.
So my recommendation would be, I'm fine scheduling our first listening session for the day after we close.
Yeah.
You know, and we can get it on the calendar now or day after we close, whatever. Like, we can schedule it now. Get it on the calendar. In the event that we don't close, we cancel it. But, you know, at least we're not waiting to close to schedule it. And then let's not waste time on a formal scientific survey. I think, you know, informal surveys are fine. And let's schedule the listening session. I'm ambivalent as to whether or not we hire a professional, you know, facilitator for that process, or if we just have a community-wide listening session with a whiteboard and we start taking down good ideas.
I concur. I don't want to go formal.
I would really like to see a survey out there, more just, more to make sure we're engaging as many people as possible, engaging people who might not have the time to come to a listening session, who might not feel comfortable speaking up in a public space, but who are happy to check the box and say, yes, I'd like this, no, I wouldn't like that. What I question is, I don't think this needs to come at huge time and expense. I don't think it's that hard to put together a survey, get some feedback, send it out, and see what we get back. I don't think it needs to reach 100% of the community in order to be still valuable input, just the same way our listening session won't reach everyone. I mean, I think we've seen, just in the last 6 months, we've seen residents that have put together really good surveys on various topics that have been at least really enlightening to me to see this is how it is. So I don't think we need to engage necessarily a professional survey firm, go to a lot of time and expense. I don't think it's that hard to draw up a survey that maybe it's not necessarily statistically relevant, but gives us color in our process.
I don't disagree with that. I was saying let's not go the formal route and hire somebody and make this a longer process.
No, I don't see the need to do that, but I would like to see us do a survey of some kind that makes it quick and easy for people who.
Yeah, like what we just did with the Zone 3. I mean, we have the capability of creating surveys.
Yeah, I'm with you. We just got to be careful, because if you know, if it's a cocktail napkin survey, it's a cocktail napkin survey, and people are going to say, yes, I'd love a library and a community center. So you have to weigh that, you have to balance that.
Against willingness to pay, of course.
With willingness to pay, and there is a little bit of survey science that's associated with this. So we just got to be, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and, you know, I did surveys on the Goofy Town Hall thing, right? So, I mean, I've done them as well. So.
But I mean, we're not getting that willingness to pay necessarily from a listening session either. So I don't see why the survey is getting rolled out, but the listening session.
I'm not suggesting rolling it out. I'm suggesting we just got to make sure we don't accidentally open up that can of worms around.
The question, the concern I have, and, you know, for a little while I was not on board with Laura, but I'm on board with her now. Because surveys can be good and bad. But it does concern me that we continue to have residents of our town get ahead of us because we are reluctant to do some sort of a survey. And then what ends up happening is the survey gets skewed. Not necessarily because that person is intending to do it, but people in the community say, oh my gosh, you skewed that survey. At least if it's coming from us, even if we put 5 questions on it, at least then we took the lead on it, as opposed to having a resident go out and say, well, I really believe this is what we should put in there, and we lose control of what happens. So I am reluctantly now saying, I think we need to do something, because if we don't do it, someone in the community is going to do it, and they may well do it in a way that makes us uncomfortable. It won't be wrong, but it may make us uncomfortable.
Well, and I mean, I'll say based on what I heard tonight, I want to go out and just survey the people that I know and say, hey, what do you think? I'm going to put together something brief. And I'm saying that because I don't want to step on toes by doing that, but I'm really eager to hear what the community thinks of all of this.
Survey Monkey.
I mean, literally, if we could come up with... Thank you, ma'am. Even if staff could come up with 5 questions or something that they think might be the right questions, or somebody come up with them. I know we can't have a discussion offline, but I really do believe we need to get ahead of this and not allow the community to control it.
Might I propose that for our retreat on the 29th, maybe we could have staff come up with the questions by then. We as a board could discuss on the 29th and then get the survey out shortly thereafter.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Do we have a full agenda for our next meeting? Can we get a week earlier? I mean, I have no problem actually getting going on this, especially because by that time we're going to start to have ideas on inspection.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry.
It'd be nice to have some extra time. Just
Okay.
Not only put questions together, but maybe the timeline and, you know, just more information you guys could look at.
The retreat works.
Okay, anything else before we adjourn? Okay, I have one minor thing. On consent agenda item 3A, the approval of the meeting notes from June 17th, I should have abstained on that because I was absent, but so if you could just make a note that I will abstain from consent 3A. Just so I don't.
Well, you can actually still vote even if you weren't present at the meeting itself, just as part of a quorum.
Okay.
So.
I just wanted to clarify that I was not here. Thank you. All right. Anything else before we adjourn? All right. We're adjourned.